literally 4 inches tall. Then I don't know. Hey, Jen, how are you?
Not that fancy.
Getting close to that time, I've made a few announcements. Bathrooms are located in the foyer through the double doors. Emergency exits from the room are the door behind you or through the foyer. If you haven't signed in already, please sign the white attendance sheet. The corner at the entrance. This meeting is available via live stream from the Diligent Community Platform. Please note that the chat feature is not monitored. Public comment is accepted in person. Link to the video will be posted to the Diligent Community website next week. This is a business meeting. The board asks for your cooperation to maintain the quorum. Please be considerate and refrain from interrupting board members and other speakers. I'd like to call to order the February 23rd, 2023 regular board meeting at 6 p.m. Roll call.
Commissioner Lusson.
Here.
Commissioner Rapp. Commissioner Ruth.
Present.
Commissioner Seaman. I'm here. Commissioner Cotto.
Here.
Commissioner James.
Here.
And Commissioner Rapp is noted.
I'm
He
here.
just walked in. We do need to add Commissioner Archambault by telephone, so it's going to.
Can I have a motion to accept Nikki Archambault to attend by phone to Thomas?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Nikki,
We
welcome
hear
to
there.
the meeting. Can you hear us? Hello, Nikki.
Hey, Mickey, can you hear us?
You might be on mute. We'll see. Well, this one's 1 minute. Are there any changes to the agenda while we're trying to get Nikki on?
Yes. You have a change to your closed meeting minutes.
Okay, we do have one change to the closed meetings. We will also be going to closed meeting pursuant to 2C21 of the Open Meetings Act, which is the discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed in this act, but for purpose of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06. Because we anticipate some amendments to the closed session meeting minutes, those will be discussed in closed. We will likely return to open session if there is consensus on the amendment, and then we would motion to approve those closed session meeting minutes as amended. But that will only occur after we come back from closed. Any other changes to the agenda?
There you go, Mickey. You're with us now.
All right, Nikki, you can hear us?
Okay, thank you.
Great.
You do have one.
I can hear you just fine.
Or changes to the agenda, Jenna?
No change to the agenda. I just want to jump in before we move on to finance.
Okay.
The Park District has been working to continue to add to staff, and I'm honored to be able to introduce Kate Harrison, who has just joined us this week as part of our marketing team. So Kate, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kate Erickson, and I came from River Trails Park District in Mount Prospect most recently. And prior to that, I was with Park District of Highland Park. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know all of you and working with you, and I'm happy to be here.
Her first day, she spent with Kyle Berg and the recreation teams hosting an away trip, I guess, for skiing, right?
Yeah, we were up at Alpine Valley. She was a very useful part of the chaperone staff.
And she came back Tuesday.
Yeah.
In 1 piece.
Yes. Well, I didn't ski, but it was fun getting to know everyone in a different way than I normally would on the first day, so it was good.
Wonderful.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. May I have a motion to approve the January 2023 financials? So moved. Second? there's a motion and a second. Discussion, Jim?
Thank you. Thank you, Warren. A couple of things I want to point out. On the first page, the operating surplus is actually higher than it states. There was a math sign error. We had a minus, we should have had a plus. So the operating surplus is actually $327,154. And the performance drivers down below will add up to that number. A couple of things I want to point out about financials. We are still receiving some 2022 invoices. Most specifically, we have employees who have the ability to turn in medical expenses for reimbursements up until March 15th. So some of those are still trickling in. So we will see those numbers rolling back to 2022 probably for the next month or so. We had an old, very old legal invoice that was presented to us, the Cat and Gooch and Roseman invoice. The 2021 expense that was presented to us very recently. We just paid that.
What was that regarding?
John's got it.
Actually, there's, I believe, a 2020 expense.
Oh, 2020, okay.
It started as about, what, Steve, 23,000, 25,000?
23,000.
We talked it down to 6,000. It's associated with the environmental exposures at Crow Island Woods as part of the village stormwater project. So we went to a third party outside of, I think it's outside of Robin Schwartz's scope of.
Right, it was their environmental expert who was billing about $900 to $1,000 an hour. And we needed just a little bit of input from them on a utility question related to the stormwater rates.
So the delay of the actual bill was due to the back and forth around.
No. So the bill was reduced, it just was not paid on a timely manner, so we did not know that it had not been paid. The invoice was resubmitted to the park district.
Do we throw that into 22?
It's 6.
Just out of curiosity, I don't know.
But it did precede John or did it precede Jim?
Yes.
There you go. How do you get up?
The other thing I want to point out, and I was going to touch on this in the vouchers, but it's applicable here as well. We're seeing a lot of invoices coming from Kemper Sports Management. This is the first full month they've been running the entire show. A number of the invoices there reflect different expenses. One of them is the standard management fees, $7,500 per month. The rest are things like salary, benefits, and operating expenses for the employees who are working for us through Kemper. Christina was kind enough to point out that there's enough detail in the description. This first one through, we're going to iron out those bugs, and I will specify exactly which charges, which accounts those belong to going forward. So I will provide more detail to the board.
Yeah, as we just try and assess the operating expense of the golf course, it's helpful to know what's human, what's benefits.
Right. When they present that to me, I then have to map to our accounting structure.
Yeah.
Right. And I just didn't put enough detail in the description. I will amend that
Okay.
going forward.
In your free time.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the sort of the high points. Are any questions? One thing I will add, our expenses are outstripping our revenues for the month of January, which is not unusual. We have to start collecting any program revenue. February, we started collecting program and recreation fees. So the February numbers will offset the expenses very shortly. However, the $2.4 million we got from Cook County is presented us with more than enough cash flow to offset any expenses we've incurred. So cash speaking, we're in a great position. Now, all that cash was rolled back to 22 as it should have been, but it still hit our accounts in January. So we're in good shape there.
Can I ask one more question? Just on the last page, you've got the Wintrust Series B debt certificate.
You have to speak up a little louder so the audience can hear you.
Last page.
You guys in the, on the cash and investments page, you've got 3 million Wintrust Series B debt certificates, which is what we drew down on late December.
Correct.
I'm assuming that that is invested in some interest-bearing account.
Yes, it's rolled into the Wintrust Max Safe account, which is earning the daily liquidity rate.
Okay, so like, is it 4 off.
Or it's or in change.
Okay, any other questions for Jim? Hearing none, roll call please.
Commissioner Archambault.
Hold on, do we want to just note that the correction will be made to the operating performance with the approval?
Yes,
So that that will be
Okay.
adjusted?
perfect.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
so note that the proper amendment will be made to the financials, as noted earlier. Ready for roll call?
Commissioner Archambault.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp.
Yes.
Commissioner Rude.
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman.
Yes.
Commissioner Koto.
Yes,
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Moving on to vouchers, may I have a motion to approve the vouchers for $511,153.24 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Jim, back to you.
Well, I've already touched on the Kemper Sports Management and the Canton Region. Those were sort of the more outlying aspects of the voucher, so it's just fairly straightforward. I will say that the transition from Commissioner Seaman to Commissioner Rapp has been seamless.
they're both very skilled.
David had to run like a well-oiled machine, so he handed it off to Cynthia here in very good shape. So thank you, David, for your hard work over many months. And so far, Cynthia was going to be up to the start. So that's all I have to comment on.
No questions on the vouchers?
Covered,
All right, it's good.
Right,
Yeah, that would, I already said, yeah.
All right. Hearing no further comments or questions, roll call please.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp.
Yes.
Commissioner Rude.
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman.
Yes.
Commissioner Koto.
Yes,
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Commissioner Archambault.
Yes.
Motion passes.
It's time to move on to remarks from visitors. Remarks from visitors is your opportunity to address the board on any issue. Called upon, come to the center position in front of the commissioners, state your name for the record, and speak directly to the board. Keep all comments under 3 minutes. This is not a question and answer forum, so please do not expect a response or answer from the park board this evening. If you prefer to share your comments in writing, you may use the comments card, which are available near the sign-in sheets. Any park district staff will accept your card and be shared with the board. Would anyone like to speak at this time? All right, no comments from visitors at this time. We'll have another opportunity later in the meeting. Approval of minutes. Without objection, we will act on the following items with a single vote. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, including 6.1, closed session meeting minutes of October 13, 2022. 6.2, closed session meeting minutes of October 27, 2022. 6.3, closed session meeting minutes of November 3rd, 2022. Committee of the whole meeting minutes of January 12, 2023. Closed session meeting minutes of January 12, 2023. Regular board meeting minutes of January 26, 2023. Closed session meeting minutes of January 26, 2023. We have a motion to approve all minutes as presented.
so moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion.
The changes that were circulated will be incorporated?
So, thank you. Commissioner Rapp, Commissioner Rude, and Commissioner James each offered some proposed changes to the meeting minutes. Some are specific to the open meeting minutes, some are specific to the closed meeting minutes. We'll address the closed meeting minutes in closed session. The open meeting minutes, we can talk about in open session. So, I sent to each of you a breakdown for the changes proposed for January 12th, as well as the changes proposed for January 26th. And I'm open to board discussion on how you want to resolve any of the proposed changes from the commissioners. I do want to note that Commissioner Rapp had sent some proposed changes, I believe it was on Monday. I reviewed the tape, we went in and you and I had some conversation, and I pre-inserted your changes
Okay.
to the meeting minutes before I issued the memo. So everybody has meeting minutes that incorporate your two changes. So.
Okay. I was okay with Lauren's change.
It was just a characterization, right, of the comments. Costa, you had made some comments regarding Shabika was requested by all three respondents. They didn't submit with Shabika, but all three respondents to the RFQ asked Shabika if they would be a sub-consultant if selected. And that, I just wanted to clarify that in the minutes.
And I appreciate that clarification, and then I also had a suggestion, which has been reflected. So does anyone have any problem with my suggestion for January 12th?
Nope.
Great.
All right.
And there are ones also for January 26th that, again, Commissioner Wu proposed. If everybody's good with those, I'll incorporate the changes from each of the three commissioners and go from there.
So which of the closed meeting minutes are we going to consider later?
Bear with me here, those are going to be October 13th and November 3rd.
So 6.1 and 6.3 will be removed from this consent agenda action. And we'll discuss that in closed. All right,
And the rest.
so motion stands as motion to approve the minutes as presented, 6.2, 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, and 6.7. As amended,
As amended.
as amended. All right,
So that was, I had Commissioner Cotto and Commissioner Seaman were the initial motions. Do we want to stay with those?
Well, yeah.
Okay,
all right,
how about that? All right.
roll call, please.
Commissioner Archambault,
Yes.
Commissioner Lutson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp.
Yes.
Commissioner Rubin. Commissioner Seaman.
Yes.
Commissioner Cotto.
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes,
Motion passes.
all right, under communications.
Yep, so your meeting packet includes some of the communications that we've received. Bear with me here from the record, and I believe there's one in here from the Chicago Tribune, but I'd have to verify that. But they're in your packet, and as we receive them, we put them in the packet, so everything's up to date.
Any questions on communications? Moving on. Up to unfinished business, proposed media policy for the Winnetka Park District.
Yep, so the media policy was circulated to the commissioners for review and assessment of the changes that were made. And there are, I think some of the commissioners have further consideration for the media policy as presented. And so I'm open to better understanding what the commissioners want in the way of changes to the proposed media policy. We good with the segments 1 through 6?
We're reviewing the draft as of February 6th. Comments on that or additions to?
I have a comment, and it deals with paragraph 5, which states, commissioners shall not use the media to publicly debate matters of public policy pending or reasonably expected to be pending before the Board of Park Commission's board deliberations about Park District business should occur during public meetings. And expected to be pending almost suggests we need to be clairvoyant on what possibly could be forthcoming. Quite frankly, I think the media policy is excellent with the exclusion of paragraph 5, and quite frankly, I don't think we need paragraph 6 because paragraph 6 is already covered in our policy manual, that we as commissioners have a duty to accept and abide by the decisions of the board. So that's already in there. So my recommendation continues to be that we exclude paragraphs 5 and paragraph 6. And other than that, I'm very pleased with the media policy.
Thoughts?
I would agree with Commissioner Root. I think 6 is already addressed in the more general part of,
The board member ethics that we previously reviewed,
Yes.
4.14.
yeah.
I have a question of Steve. What, paragraph 5, and I know that this was Ansel, Blink, and you jointly, so this maps to media policies from other park districts. Paragraph 5 is, in your opinion, useful. Can you say exactly why? Sorry, did I mean to put you on the
That's
spot?
all right. Just for the record, I did not participate in this,
Okay.
the development, the
Okay.
writing, or
Okay, All
the
right.
editing of this document.
I misremembered the joint effort, sorry.
Yeah, not on this one. I think this is a really good practice, that we not use the media to publicly debate, the matters that are likely to come before the board. And this is very customary language that you see in like a code of ethics, or in, IAPD publishes the Park Commissioners Code of Conduct, similar language like this. The idea is, I think, in part to respect the opinions of the other commissioners, so that, decisions are made as a group together in a public setting, rather than somebody trying to leverage a relationship or an opportunity in the media that not everybody's gonna get. I think that's kind of the general idea behind it. So I think there's a really valid purpose for it. In terms of being able to enforce this, that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
And I think we all know that, First Amendment really plays a big role in the ability to enforce this. This is more about trying to build a quality of discourse within the organization at the board level, in meetings, being respectful to your other commissioners, to communicate with each other, as opposed to going off by yourself and taking shots at the other members, or, amplifying your opinion over those of the others that may not agree. So it's just the encouragement is to try to get that robust debate to take place in this context rather than in the press.
And then I have a question for you. Did you find that it was similar, I know that you mapped this to other
Well,
park
actually,
districts'
I do
codes.
believe-
Just let me finish. I know that you mapped this to other park district codes, and I totally take your point about, or expected to be pending, because I do think that that is beyond our scope. But I'm wondering if we can leave this in, because I think it does highlight the focus, which is we're trying to work as a group, and we're trying to, is that?
If I may speak.
Yeah.
I called Jason Anselman, who is General Counsel of IPD, and I did this about 5 weeks ago. And I asked him, send me media policies from your gold ribbon policy manuals. He sent me Oak Park, and he sent me Glenview, and those were the drafts that I provided to each of you. They do not have either of these paragraphs in them. And with all due respect, I do believe that this media policy may have originated because of comments that I may have said to the press. But when I did, and when I do, and when I go before any of our village governmental bodies, I have the following preface. My name, I'm a resident of the village of Winnetka, and I am speaking in my individual capacity, and I do not represent the views or the policy of any governmental body. I have always done that, and consistently I will continue to do that. As a result, again, I recommend that paragraph 5 and paragraph 6 is redundant. We already have it.
Six, I agree, yeah.
Agreed.
And I think that
Six
the
is redundant.
expected to be pending is an excellent comment. My only concern is, I don't think you should take it personally, because I think it serves all of us well to reinforce the idea that we're here to collaborate in a group.
But that's our code of ethics.
True, but I also think it needs to be articulated in the media policy. I think when you highlight it as a media policy, it makes it crystal clear. So I would say that the paragraph stays in, expected to be pending, gets stricken, and paragraph 6 gets stricken. Does that work for everybody?
I respectfully disagree.
Eric?
And I'm sorry.
Should
I
we
have
let's
to-
give everybody an opportunity to speak, Cynthia?
If the First Amendment trumps it, I feel like we should remove it, because I think other members in other capacities, we could have a president who's advancing a position that has not been decided on this board. And how does that apply? Does it apply equally to everyone?
Oh, I think it applies, yeah, I think it applies equally to everyone. I think that's the intent. I think that's the safety of putting this in.
I mean, it is good policy. It's good policy not,
All right, I'm gonna intercede so that we can try and organize this discussion. So Cynthia,
sorry.
Okay.
okay. Colleen, do you want to make any further comments?
My position stands. We
Okay.
had I actually did the work.
Yeah, I just want to go, I'm trying to give everyone the opportunity. I understand. Eric?
I like 5, just change, or reasonably expected to be pending, and then strike 6.
Second piece, I would strike the words "or reasonably expected to be pending" before the board.
If we're strike, I would say
And I
strike
remove
6.
6 because it's redundant, it's already in our policy. So is there consensus? Oh, Mickey, my apologies. Mickey, you look different tonight.
Mickey, you there? Mickey Archambault.
Did we lose you?
I am here, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Just want to know, yes, we can. Want to know if you have a comment on the media policy.
Yes, very quickly, because I literally listened to an exercise of item number 5, where we are publicly debating items at a board meeting. I would say it should remain. If there is a word or two that you would like to delete from it, that would be fine by me.
All right.
What about using public comment at other governmental bodies to debate? It just applies to the media. You can still give your public comments in whatever capacity you want.
Absolutely. You have to, I think Colleen's recommendation in preamble is good. I think that would be helpful to include in a board member policy guideline.
I agree, and I have no problem with
But
that.
I think it's great because it's not just for this board. It's taking lessons that we learn along the way and communicating that forward to new board members so they have a better understanding.
Yes, question. What happens if we are contacted by the media and asked our personal opinion on a policy matter that is pending before?
I think that's your judgment.
I-
And these guidelines give you some, some frame of reference in how to respond.
I personally, I would say no comment. Because I think it's the safest strategy. I would say no comment. I would say come to the meeting, no comment, we're gonna have a discussion, please join us.
In section 4, just for the record, does actually restate Colleen's preamble that she uses, clearly state his or her comments are being made as a private resident and not as a representative of the district. So
Yeah.
that's also in here, so. And I think that's the answer too, if somebody contacts you and says, what's your opinion? Well, I can give you my opinion, it's not the board's opinion, but, and that's pretty much standard practice.
Yeah, I mean, this is good stuff. It goes on to say, even then, board members should remember that comments made as a private resident are likely to be attributed to the district. So, I mean, it's a fair assessment. So I'm in favor of keeping 5, but removing "or reasonably expected to be pending," and then striking 6 in its entirety because it's redundant.
And then do we want to add, Commissioner Rapp, do you want to add a provision about speaking in front of another governmental entity?
We just covered that in 4.
Yeah. We just,
Oh, it should
Totally
be.
covered in 4.
yeah.
All right.
Perfect.
All right, so
I
that's,
move that we adopt the media policy, striking in paragraph 5, or expected to be pending, number 1, and number 2, and striking in paragraph 6.
okay, so that this can continue in our next open session. It's not set for consideration tonight.
Perfect.
So we can make the amendments. I'll circulate it to the commissioners so that we have a final set of provisions, but it is not presented for a vote tonight.
Yeah.
How about that?
Great.
There you go.
Wrap it up. Thank you. Moving on to 8.2, Park District response to 205 Sheridan permit application.
Yep, so at the board's request, I first reviewed the section 401 water quality certification as it applies to 205 Sheridan Road and its permit. And I sent an email to everybody indicating we already had solved that, or there's information that gives you a roadmap as to when that might appear, that certification. I also then reached out to Lauren Wobig to talk about our consultants having an interest to talk with the consultants for 205 Sheridan Road. He and I had a conversation, which I then followed with an email. Not heard back from Lauren Wobig. I also copied representatives additional representatives from the IDNR as well as a representative from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. But I said, hey, we want to make sure our breakwater height and the way in which it is positioned with 205 Sheridan Road's proposed breakwater, that we are coordinated and informed as we move our process forward. So there was no pushback from Laura Mulvey. So that's in our communications, so just an update.
Any further discussion? All right. Elder Lane and Centennial Beaches workshop feedback.
Yep, one piece of the puzzle that was not in our initial summary of the workshop, we had maybe 6 or 7 emails that had come in after kind of the deadline time for summarizing what had taken place on January 21st. Those comments have now been included in these documents, which are part of the meeting packet. So everything's complete.
I'll make one comment. Please. I just did a couple of word searches in the document. Views, that word comes up a lot. Passage or walking, I think our latest designs, our conversations are addressing views and passage. So that those, from what my word search in that document, those seem to be the two most,
Populated themes.
yeah.
Any further discussion on the comments? All right. Elder Lane, Centennial Beaches project timeline, 8.4.
Coach, do you want to comment on this by chance? Where we're at, what we're doing?
Sure. Currently with the Elder Lane Centennial project, as you'll see in new business coming forward, we're trying to lay out our next steps in that process. Once, depending on the deliberations tonight and discussion with the board, and ultimately possible approval to move forward with certain contracts as it relates to firms and third-party groups that we're going to be, or trying to utilize to continue with this work. Our goal is to continue working towards a March 18th open house meeting to bring it back to the village. We're looking to, for that to take place. Unfortunately, the community house was already booked. We're anticipating that to take place over at Skokie School cafeteria, space that we've already secured for that. And then to continue on with this dialogue, bring it back to the board, tying back to the information that was brought forward during that meeting, the information that we received from the community, and then continue on through that process. Ultimately, bringing it back to the board in March for further discussion on our ability to move forward with different parameters of the project, and then continuing that project forward, ultimately to design drawings that can be approved by the board shortly thereafter, and ultimately going toward the design that we can move to permit, and then further permit for Elder, and then Centennial's process would follow there shortly behind, probably about a month or a month and a half timeline behind Elder, so we can continue on trying to proceed with getting Elder open for the 2024 season, depending, once again, bids and everything else that would need to be approved by the board, plans, to try to get that open for the 24 season. That's kind of the, in a nutshell, if you would. There'll be further discussion and deliberation around some of the meetings, I'm sure, that have been included with some of the scopes of work, as I said, identified under new business. But we're looking to continue this process forward as directed by the board. Any questions as it relates to that timeline currently?
I had a question on the timeline. It feels very short to me to have the meeting on the 18th and then be expected to make a decision on the 23rd, because we, are we expected to do post-workshop feedback? Like, how is staff going to assimilate the feedback from the workshop to have it in our meeting packet by Tuesday at 5 for discussion on Thursday?
I believe the 8, go ahead.
Yeah, can I address it?
Yeah.
We held an open house, so let's go back to October 27th. This board made a motion to proceed with Elder 2A Stone Light, subject to peer review and the engagement of a coastal engineer. That process has morphed, but we stuck to the January 21st workshop and open house, where we solicited input, and that's what we're just looking at, the feedback received from that open house. So this matter's been pending with specific direction in Elder since October 27th. We hosted the open house workshop session. We have feedback which each of the board members should be considering, and we're going to be giving further direction. So that consideration will be contemplated over the next 4 weeks or 3 weeks to be able to arrive at the refinement to the Elder Stone Groin. We know that the two big issues are, David said it, views, right? And with Elder, it was the stormwater discharge. That piece of the puzzle, to make sure that the stormwater discharge was properly reviewed by coastal engineer, civil engineer, being Thomas Burke, whose contract is being considered tonight. So those are really, it's the height and the discharge point and the shape of that groin. That otherwise, those elements had previously been decided upon. We know we have already submitted for a permit to the MWD for the stormwater discharge, and the only open issue a year ago was how that specific discharge point was going to be addressed. And that's the subject of experts. So we have engaged Spaceco, we're engaging Red Barn, we've got Shabika, Petrocoda, we've got Christopher Burke. And then, of course, we know that the village is also going to take a look at this as they did before, through their in-house engineering staff, likely a referral to Strand, and if they follow through on what they did at their study session, they will also have Baird, a separate coastal engineer, opining on our proposal. There's no shortage of experts looking at this, and there are really two issues.
May I just ask that you qualify one comment? We are not engaging Shabika. If I understand, based on the contract drafts that have been presented. So that is not.
Thank you for the clarification.
Engaging Shabika.
We agreed in October to engage Lakota, Shabika, and a coastal engineer.
We did.
And we have subsequently moved to engaging, as we're considering later this evening, Red Barn, with Shabika as a sub-consultant to Red Barn. We're also engaging Christopher Burke Engineering Limited, the specific expert on stormwater management.
I have one point that's related to Cynthia's comment about the feedback loop and the timeliness of it and the precision of it. And I'm wondering if we can ask our PR media team to create a QR code that allows people to simply vote about the options. Because we have 3 discrete items that we want to address. We want to address height, we want to address discharge point, and we want to address shape of groin. And we'll have options at that.
No, my expectation is that these experts are going to come back with a definitive recommendation based upon the feedback and their professional expertise.
Okay.
We know we want to preserve views.
Yeah.
We know that there's a trade-off between the height of the groin and the protection that it's going to afford. And there are, I believe, Costa, correct me, there's already been 1 joint meeting, at least 1 joint meeting, and there's 2 or 3 more joint meetings between the experts to hash out these issues.
Our goal is to continue this process forward as, depending on what happens tonight, yes.
Assuming that contracts get approved tonight, there's a meeting Tuesday,
We're
a
trying
week
to
from
set up a meeting
Tuesday,
schedule for next
and then
Tuesday, and then 2 weeks the following Tuesday, and then continue on as preparation for the 18th to derive those plans and derive that information for the 18th for the open house. So we have something substantive to get back to the public to view, instead of the rehash that we've done over and over again and just kind of focusing in, give them something that we're going to be bringing back to the board to review, and ultimately at some point in time decide upon.
So it's my contention that this board should be considering a specific design as recommended by our experts, and then we charge staff and experts with the preparation of permits based upon our consideration of that final design for Elder.
Okay.
So we've got more action action tonight to engage these people. We have joint meetings, at least 3. They'll come back with their professional recommendations. They'll present it to the public on the 18th, consider what input, and we'll deliberate on the 23rd.
We gotta keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's the other thing that came through in the feedback, is please, get Elder fixed and open it.
Mr. President?
Sure.
The feedback also said, get Elder open, and can you find a way to do that that is less rigid? We had quite a few comments that said that. And I don't know if it is appropriate for me to make this comment now, or when we start talking about the contracts, but I guess I'm talking, so very quickly I will. I continue to have a concern on how we can develop a northern break wall when we still don't know what our land mass is going to be, and we don't know, what's really gonna happen with 261 Sheridan, and quite frankly, our southern boundary. As I understand, the size of breakwaters, and I've learned a lot in the last few years, are often dependent upon the size of the actual beach that you have. So if we have a pocket beach that remains elder, and we do not have unification, then I just remain confused on how we can evaluate what we do with the length of this northern breakwater. And so hopefully staff can help me with some clarification. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. That's the timeline. On to new business, consideration of policy additions to personnel policy.
We have been working on, trying to update different pieces of the HR path, if you will. And Beth Dostert has been terrific in so many different ways, collaborating with Jim Crocker and others. There are some personnel policy additions, and I'll let Beth walk through these additions, but they're more required than deliberating, if you will. In addition, I know it's a departure from our normal process of presenting information and having the board to review the information before it's adopted. But in this instance, these are laws that we're looking to make more specific in our personnel policy. They are referenced to a certain degree, but these are great moves that Beth has identified in her initial review of the personnel policy. So Beth, do you want to provide some insight?
Sure. So in my, as he said, John said, in my initial review of the policy manual, these are 3 areas that I thought help us be more in compliance. And then I plan to do a full review of the personnel manual in 2023 to not just for compliance, obviously there's that, but then also reviewing our policies for competitiveness and making sure that we can attract and retain great employees. And then one other thing that I wanted to mention, that we had our kickoff meeting today for the compensation and classification survey or work through GovHR. I believe the board approved and signed a contract with GovHR in Q4 of 2022, so we're now moving forward with that. Starting mid-March, they will do a staff meeting to explain it and kick it off with staff and move that forward.
So to add to Beth's comments on the GovHR classification and compensation study, that will come to the board for a report in June. So some of you we'll make sure you get a copy of it, David. I know you and Nikki will want a copy. Then we'll have recommendations on.
That's a good miss.
Yeah. No, I'll stop by for sure. So that's a great step, and it is something we've kind of delayed until Beth was on board, recognizing that this was something Brittany Purnell wanted to do. but when she departed, we took a pause until Beth joined. So it's been on the front burner, but with a little bit of low heat until Beth arrived. Secondly, back to the personnel policy, Commissioner Rapp had made a suggestion to look at, as an example, the bereavement policy. And those are certainly interesting and critical parts of our personnel policy. Tonight is to look at almost mandatory changes. So we'll get to things that you had raised for sure.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, you do.
Okay, I don't have a motion, I can make a motion. Want to guide me?
Move to approve the policy manual additions as drafted by Beth Foster.
Including the Identity Protection Act, 1-day arrest and 7 Act, and whistleblower protection.
Correct.
Second.
Commissioner Archambault.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp.
Yes.
Commissioner Root.
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman.
Yes.
Commissioner Kodo.
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Sure.
Beth, I just wanted to, on behalf of the board, say thank you for taking this on and taking on action in such a short time. We really appreciate it. And I think it is a huge help to see the policy changes moving forward and see you finding your footing. So we're glad to see you here this evening. And appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One other comment. Thank you very much. Your whistleblower policy was superb. During the IAPD annual conference, there were a number of lectures on dealing with whistleblowers. And what you wrote, in my opinion, was far superior to what was prepared by counsel that made those presentations. So thank you.
All right, 9.3. Oh,
Wait,
excuse me.
no,
9.2.
9.2.
Oh,
An ultimate topic.
why didn't you ask for an agenda change? We could have moved you up.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'm excited to receive, you know?
All right, consideration of resolution 23-2-23, appointing the newly authorized IMRF agent. Speaking of Beth Foster.
Yeah, you wanted to see Beth Foster again, Commissioner Rapp. She's back.
Yeah. Yay.
Do you
I think
want-
I'm happy to make a motion
Yep.
to approve Beth Foster as our IMRF.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
All right, Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp.
Yes.
Commissioner Root.
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman.
Yes.
Commissioner Archambault.
Yes.
Commissioner Kodo.
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now we get to the main event.
Need a big fanfare.
2023 Winnetka
Kyle, you
Music
gonna drive, you want me to
Festival.
drive?
I'm gonna see if you can drive it.
Okay.
1 second.
Now, Scott, remember the folks at home are watching from that camera behind you.
Oh, so they don't want to
gotta
see my
your
back.
good
I know,
side.
exactly. I will present to them, because I know there's hundreds that are watching.
You joke
Well, let me
about that, but
capture for-
actually.
There have been, I know. I've sat in the chair before, and at times, yes, there are hundreds.
All right, I believe you should be driving.
Just the button.
Just the forward.
Okay, so I'm obviously, as you know by your agenda, here to talk about the 6th annual Winnetka Music Festival, one of the now hopefully more standard and more exciting events in the town. You know, one of the things that I think I am most excited about or proud about of this event is the number of organizations that have kind of banded together to make this happen, right? It's, you know, it may be one or two people's brainchild, but to pull something of this off of this scale, you know, anywhere, you need a lot of organizations coming together, and this is what's kind of made this festival exciting. I will point out one new logo on this, and that is the logo of Space. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Space. Space is a organization that's owned by an entity called 16 on Center. 16 on Center owns about a dozen music venues around the city. The most prominent ones are Space in Evanston, an indoor event space. The recently opened Morton Salt Shed, which is the big iconic space now just off the Kennedy Expressway. They also own Thalia Hall in Pilsen, as well as a number of others. One of the things that Mark Haller and Val Haller and I have recognized as at the age of 65, our time in terms of executing this event at some point will come to an end. And we need a transition policy. We need an organization that not only knows music, but also begins to understand what a festival like this means in our village. It is different than just a straight music festival. And one of the things that I think we have prided ourselves on is that this is a mix of music festival and a community event. And I think that it's because of that mix that, you know, the festival has been recognized so highly over the last years that it's been executed. You know, I think not only in terms of the crowds that show up, but also in terms of just recognition across the North Shore, across, you know, the suburban area. This is probably one of the best music festivals in the suburbs. So, you know, it's our objective to kind of keep it going. This year, the festival is actually kind of going back to the future. The years of COVID have been one of kind of transition. 2020, we had it canceled. 2021, we worked really closely with you guys and put it on out here. 2022 was back downtown, but it was one day. And really the festival traditionally has been a 2-day festival, Friday afternoon and then Saturday. So we want to go back to that. It's traditionally had 2 big outdoor stages along with a family stage and a chapel stage. We want to go back to that footprint also and have worked with the village, and they're in agreement that we'll be able to go back to the festival pretty much the way it was in 17, 18, and 19. We're going to keep what happened last year for those of you who attended, right? We had kind of a more nationally recognized headliner. We're going to be bringing a couple nationally recognized headliners back, but also supplementing that with more musicians who are kind of the emerging artists. We'll continue obviously with the food vendors, with the VIP area, the family stage. One of the new things that happened last year, which was very popular, which we're going to do again this year, is the dad band stage. So for those of you who know some aging musicians, this is their opportunity to kind of really break into the big time. So we're gonna keep that in the coming year. Where do I point this to? You can just push that. So if you haven't been to the fest in the first 3 years, this kind of gives you a general sense of the layout. One change from the first 3 years that we've done is we're moving the family stage onto Lincoln Avenue. The family stage had traditionally been on the Village Green, but we're going to move it downtown. It provides much more of a nice vibe, and by taking advantage of the lawn of the community house, we still have a green space. So it kind of keeps everything contained, keeps everybody together, and makes it a lot easier on us in terms of, you know, walking distances and just sheer exhaustion. So that's the festival. In terms of the Park District, we count on the Park District support in a number of ways, right? You know, part of it is equipment. You know, picnic tables, golf carts. You know, those are critical elements to enabling us to set up the fest, execute the festival, and have people, you know, be able to enjoy the festival. You know, having some marketing support, right? Inclusion in your calendar, the activities, working in terms of putting banners up. But then also, importantly, it's the financial support. You know, pulling something off like this festival costs a little over $400,000 a year. And about 90% of that is raised privately through sponsorships, through ticket sales, through patrons who sign up. So we come to the village and the Park District each year asking for some support in terms of, you know, helping us to keep this going. So that's you know, the village and the Park District funds go toward providing pretty much the money for what I would call the emerging artists. So those under the headliners, that combined $45,000 enables us to get a lot of the nationally growing artists, some of whom have now gone on to, you know, some of the folks who performed here have now gone on to the Grammy and won Grammy Awards, Billy Springs being a great example, who performed here in 18 and won a Grammy Award this past year. So, you know, we get some artists that make it big later on. So, you know, it's as I said at the beginning, it's a partnership that adds to the vibrancy of this village, and it's a partnership that really only works when all the partners kind of work together. And I think it's something that we as a village can be proud of, and I'm glad to be bringing it to you for your support. And happy to answer any questions.
I think it's probably the best $10,000 that we donate as a park district. We need to compete and keep families, and this is a unbelievable opportunity for Winnetka. And if the park district can help in some small way, this is easy.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great event, and I think it's added to this reemergence, it's re-energized Winnetka. So easy trade, easy contribution, and I would say thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks.
Anybody else want to comment?
Fully supported, cost per person, it's very low. Impact as programming for adults, which we don't often get to do, is hugely positive, fully supported.
John, aside from direct support, $10,000 plus marketing, are there any soft costs associated with staff? Is staff involved? Are we moving things around?
There's some staff time. Costa has been fantastic. Parks and maintenance team, provides some support the day before with the setup, as well as the day after, morning after, what have you, with the takedown. But Costa, 4 or 5 colleagues that participate?
Well, I will say Emerge Winnetka was a different story, but based on the Winnetka Music Fest as it's being presented again, we have a soft touch. It's delivering picnic tables, it's helping moving some barricades around with forklift. I mean, it's a soft touch. It's 3-4 people for about maybe 3-4 hours on both sides of pulling, and then a few things running into it as if we can help out, we'd love to help out. It's such a great activity.
And staff, there are other staff that might volunteer to maybe more in some of the services day of, whether it's serving sodas or what have you. Folks will do that.
Light towers again, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So, run off a couple of pieces of equipment there. We already own infrastructure that's C&I would buy otherwise.
And one thing I will say that we do try and do, so the Park District logo, the village logo, the chamber are on all the signs, on all the stages. So we do try and make sure people know this is kind of a community event.
And the financial support, Scott, I think we were one of your first movers way back when. So this is a consistent financial support. It's in our budget, so it's.
I will make one final comment. I don't know, Cynthia, if you had anything to say, but one final thing which I forgot to mention is last year we sold out, right? Now that was a little bit of an artificial cap with the village because we didn't know with COVID how comfortable people were going to feel. So we capped it at like 5,500. This year we're moving it up to 6,000. We still think that we could very well sell out, but because we don't want to have people just crowded on top of each other. We want it to be a comfortable festival. So we're going to offer early ticket sales to Winnetka residents and a discount for a period of time for Winnetka residents. So we're going to launch that in probably the first week of March.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to, oh, sorry.
I just want to say, way to go getting space to come in. I'm familiar with space at Evanston, and I find them to be awesome.
Yeah, they've been good to
So,
work with.
way to go, Scott.
Yeah. It was Val, all of that, So.
I want to offer my support. I think we'll have a motion here to approve this, but recognize you for your commitment to the community, Executive Director of the caucus, timeless devotion to this endeavor, and I hear your cries for someone else to pick up the baton. We want to find somebody that has the passion that you do. So I hope somebody out there is listening and will take that burden. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, right, all right. Thanks.
So can I have a motion to approve a $10,000 donation for the benefit of the Winnetka Music Fest?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Commissioner Archambault.
Yes.
Commissioner Lusson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp.
Yes.
Commissioner Root.
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman.
Yes.
Commissioner Kodo.
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Impromptu motion passes.
All right. May I have a motion to approve the license agreement for use by North Shore Country Day School portions of Skokie Playfield as presented in our agenda?
So moved.
second? Any discussion? Kyle?
Thank you. This contract is a great example of collaboration in the community. North Shore Country Day offers a great many things to their school community. One of the things that they are limited on is space, and so this is a great opportunity for the Park District to help them offer their diverse interscholastic athletic programs. Interscholastic athletic participation is actually a requirement of enrollment at North Shore Country Day, and so very much keeping in line with the mission of the Park District and benefiting the community. What is also an obvious and important piece of this contract is the revenue generated from the contract. We have the fees outlined in the summary. The revenue is all earmarked for the purpose of replacing our turf for the artificial turf at Skokie Playfield. Without this revenue, it would be a much higher hill to climb to generate that amount for that exclusive purpose. This contract did not need to be changed much because we have a great relationship there. We have a great partnership with their leadership, and they're excited to be locked in for another 3, but more than likely 6 years as part of this agreement. Our existing agreement is set to expire on May 26th of 2023. This agreement, as I referenced, would be a 3-year agreement with the opportunity to extend for an additional 3 for a total of 6 years, with the expiration in 2029.
And the annual rental rate has an escalation?
Yes, we have an increase every 2 years, keeping with the original structure of our previous contract. The escalation rate, I believe, is 3% between years 2, 4, and 6.
And one question, there's no expansion of the time that they could use the field. I know that sometimes we get questions from the community.
Yeah.
That we are.
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the real positives of our partnership with North Shore Country Day is they use the times that we can't. Essentially, they are right in the early afternoon before D36 and New Trier lets out for the day. So it's just a great partnership all around.
Very good. Any other questions?
How long have we been partners with them?
We are over 10 years. This agreement has been in place actually prior to the artificial turf field.
Yeah.
So I think the discussions I've seen date all the way back to 2013.
Yeah.
It's just, they're wonderful participants in this, in our relationship.
Good.
Great.
Thanks.
All right, if there's no further comments, roll call, please.
Commissioner Archambault,
Yes.
Commissioner Lesson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp,
Yes.
Commissioner Root,
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Okoto,
Yes.
and Commissioner James.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to 9.5, consideration for the Winnetka Park District's contract with Red Barn Design and Engineering, SC. Costa.
Warren, thank you. As the board has been aware, through the RFP process, has brought us to this point in time where we're looking to put together a recommendation to continue our progress on the Elder Centennial front. Don't want to belabor this with much history, but I just want to kind of recall some of the events that got us here today. Of course, there's the October 27th meeting with the discussion to move forward with looking for a peer review, as it was stated, to look through the Lakota Group as well as Shabika, and then an outside third party to be brought in for that review. As we've gone through that RFQ process, we did identify Matt Wright as the leading consultant to continue to assist us on our path forward. Through that review and through negotiations through the contract and where we're at, this was broken down in a phased approach for 2 independent projects. Elder there was direction given for staff to continue with Elder as it sits today without taking into consideration the property exchange, as well as Centennial that can move forward without taking into consideration the property exchange as we sit today. That has been put into this agreement and into the proposal that's in front of us. The phased approach is broken down into the 3 phases. First phase of work, of course, is outlined. Apologize. Through the initial design work, which essentially is basically bringing everybody up to speed on the project. So review of the existing design for Centennial Park, taking a look at all the information that's included there, looking to the work product history that we have on the project, the work that's been completed by Spaceco, by Lakota, work that was previously completed by Shafiq and Associates, as well as the engineering work around the stormwater. Take that information, bring it back, host some design meetings to get the team up to speed, Red Barn and their sub-consultants, and then continue forward towards an open house in March. Moving from phase 1 into phase 2, we're looking to then proceed forward once we have approval on a design concept from the park board to engage into the next step, which is moving into the final design plans and permitting. From step 2 into step 3, once again, going through the permit process, we will need to move forward with the IDNR, Army Corps of Engineers, and all the MWRD and other regulatory agencies as well to formally get adoption, or not, adoption, but an approved permit through that phase of work. And then moving into final phase of work, which would be construction documents and ultimately bidding for that work. That plane of scope is broken down once again for Elder, independent of Centennial. And that was done to take in consideration where we are at with the property exchange and the board's direction to move forward independent of that process. Through this process, we did review the scope of work as it was identified in the RFQ. That directly mirrors the scope of work that's being presented here tonight. The cost for that scope of work is broken down into those 3 phases, with the first phase of work broken down, to $113,870 for phase 1. Phase 2 was $80,650, and then phase 3 was totaled at $219,000 plus the bidding phase, which was $7,425. That brings the total project cost for Elder Lane Beach to the total sum of $421,695. Now I'd like to explain that for 2023's budget purposes, we did budget $6,750,000 allocated to continue with the Elder Lane project. There was a $250,000 assumption for soft cost to keep moving forward with that process. In addition to Red Barn, as not to move forward, but to put into perspective, there are supplementary proposals as well that will need to be done in conjunction with this proposal to complement the work from Red Barn as it's identified in the scope of services. Red Barn's scope of services land basically from the toe of the bluff or the existing steel lakeward and encompass all perspectives of that, as well as the formal submittal of all bid drawings to a final bid package, specifications, specs books for that, and then the design drawings that would be put out on the marketplace for the typical bid process. That in turn, the compiling of all those documents from the Lakota team, from Spaceco's team, from Burke's team to compile that one set does take on quite a bit of work. There is also consideration around the different design elements of the project that include quite a significant amount of structural engineering work to support that. The cost that you're seeing as part of phase 3 did include a proposal of $117,000 which is included in Matt's price for structural engineering on his end to complete design elements as they were shown with the Elder Lane 2A or Stone Light 2A. So taking into consideration of what that project cost is, the breakdown for Matt Wright as it relates to that project in conjunction with the Lakota team is about a 10% soft cost on the overall project cost. We're looking at that once again, these 2 projects independently, although I'm looking in the board for approval for the total package or combined price between the two bids of $800,000 and change, it should be noted that these two projects should be taken in consideration as separate projects. And I say that to the point that Elder has a budget to it. It has a plan move forward that we have in concept. The ability for them to come in, take that plan, distill it back down, review it from an independent perspectives, take that forward with the additional design content upstream of our tableland work, the access road to allow this to be done by land-based construction, redoing the parking lot up top, the access road and all the other synergies that are provided with the existing walkways and sidewalks through the park need to take into consideration. When we look at the entire scope of work and putting that together along with the stormwater element, which is a large piece of this puzzle, we have to also take a view of that in constant with what we're achieving on the lakefront. I know there was questions asked earlier tonight, how are we driving to a breakwater arm design length, width, based on what element of beach, because those typically are directly related to one another if we don't understand what's going on with the center property and how that can be sized and scaled accordingly. That's the work for the engineers to do. That's their scope of work, that's what we're paying them to do, to work through that. As part of the RFQ, it was identified for them to take the full-on approach and understand what that looked like, so this could be built in the phased implementation. So not only can we build in Elder, but take in consideration of what 261 would potentially provide us for services as we move this forward in the future. Hopefully that's sooner than later, but whenever that time might come and the Park District has another opportunity to try to secure 261's property to combine the two parcels, that will be part of the design thought that goes into this. I will say that the amount might seem relatively high as it relates to Elder, but doing a little perspective, going back, when I pulled the documents for Lloyd, our soft cost through a very low project, if you will, there wasn't a lot of components to the initial phase of work. It was basically a stone project with no steel. The soft cost for that was $294,000 on a base price project without contingency of $3,719,000, which is about an 8% ratio. When you take a look at previous design for a more complex project, and this isn't necessarily apples to apples because this is not a coastal piece, but when we look at the build out of the staircase at Tower Road, our soft costs were $249,000 and change, and our total project cost was $1.57 million, which is about a 15% perspective on our soft cost ratio as it relates to the overall project. So I just want that to be known to better understand when you're looking at the proposal, yes, the ask is greater than the one site because we are looking at two separate projects. Elder was identified to try to move forward as fast as we can, get that back open for the public. We have a lot of great information that we received, a lot of great information that we're still going to be able to use and repurpose from previous engagements, not only with the community, but work that was done already. The slope stabilization and the work that was done by Space Code to design the ramp down, the auto turns to be able to have and land-based construction, those elements aren't going to waste. The stormwater piece that Burke has already worked on and engineered isn't going to waste. Those were already had approval to move forward with our permitting, and we had to pull the permitting back based on the decision from the park board back on June 9th. We're continuing to move forward with this process, and we're trying to do it in a way that not only do we meet the expectations, we're trying to exceed those expectations for the community so we can build the best park possible for I don't want to say a lifetime, for at least the next 100 years, if not longer. Life expectancies on projects like this are not 10, 15, 20, 50 years. They're 75, 100 years and longer. So we take that into perspective as well when you're considering the project cost and amortization over the years of what this is going to serve back, and it starts putting this into a greater focus. When we look at Centennial, Centennial is taken into a different perspective now, because there is less work that has been done at Centennial. There's some design concepts that have been created through the Lakefront Master Plan and what we've done thus far, and continuing those perspectives through the inclusion of a dog park, size and scale of what that looks like, access through the beach, trying to make sure that we maintain that, taking a look at a swimming beach element, pulling in the access element. Those are all design criteria that have been included. Elder is not starting with a base plan, it's starting with base concept, and then that plan will be driven.
Centennial?
I'm sorry, yes, Centennial, thank you. Is being driven from a plan, or concepts of the plan, not a formal plan itself. We have renditions that we're looking at previously that were shown at the, our January 21st meeting that did take into consideration different theories on how to install the dog beach, how to protect it safely, how to gain access through our Centennial Beach, or access beyond through as it's been identified. We want to keep those passages, we want to keep that design and content, we want to make sure we're meeting all the criteria set forth by all the governing boards, whether it's the village, whether it's permitting that's required from the MWRD, whether it's permitting from the IDNR, you name the accolade, there's permitting involved to an extent. We're going to continue on through that. The cost for that project came in at $418,375. Matt Wright has taken on a larger scope of services for what's been identified for Centennial versus what was identified for Elder, because it made sense, since those haven't been as far vetted and there's less work that was done, to keep those under one principle. And that was the reason that was done, was to keep more focus on that and try to help reduce the overall project cost for that. There is still great design input from the Lakota team, because we're looking to the Lakota team to help with the design concept as we drive forward, to make sure that we're using that same approach and focus as we've done with our other beaches and our other elements, to continue that same consistency along our lakefront, along our lake shore. So there is some design perspective there. There was some questions that were submitted prior to. I'd be happy to discuss and review those with the committee as well, or the board tonight if there's discussion further on that. But I'd also like to take a breath and let the board members ask questions as they may, as it relates to the proposal and the project.
Cynthia, you had several questions. Do you want to present those?
The other people, do you want me to just?
Yeah,
Okay.
you were prepared. Please start.
Okay.
Please.
Well, no, in the spirit of not putting staff on the spot, it's good to give a little bit of a heads up, if we can. The first question I have is, how does this compare to budgeted costs? And it sounds like we budgeted $250,000 for soft costs, and we are at, for Elder alone, at $419 plus $232.
Yeah, I think total cost for Elder is going to be $669, if I remember correctly, all in with all the different proposal work, not only with what's in front of us here from Matt, but additionally with the work for from the Lakota group, as well as Burke.
And then plus Burke. And
Yeah,
then,
for $15,200.
are we also allocating some of the costs that we've invested previously with these vendors on this project to say, these go in? Because, I mean, those were soft costs that we've already incurred, and some of them hopefully are reusable work, and some of them might be sunk costs.
Sure.
So so this is understating some of the, in my view, some of the soft costs too.
Yep. So, yeah, your first question, yes, $250,000 is what we had budgeted for the soft costs on the overall project at $6.75 million. How did it compare to Lloyd's soft cost? Lloyd's soft cost for $294,000 is what we had paid. I would just like to point out that Lloyd's process was a lot less. It was a quicker, softer practice. We contracted completely through Shadik and Associates and looked for them to complete all the work for us. There was a sub-consultant fee for Matt Wright at that time as a sub-consultant to Shadika, who he performed some of the engineering work that was needed, but all in without construction observation, that cost was $294,000.
Okay.
So once again, that was about an 8% based on the base bid of $307,000 $3,719,000, which did go up because we added the additional foot of stone, which I believe was a $192,000 add. And then we did some of the design build elements of the boat storage area that has been turned out to be a great revenue source for us, the access ramp and the boardwalk along with that project that were design build items, addition to the project that were not necessarily formally engineered, but done in a design build capacity.
Should I keep going?
Please.
Okay, building on prior work, what opportunities are there to use prior work to reduce costs? I had two examples. Space Co, we've already spent like $45,000 with them, so what's the additional $27,000 for? Oh, that's on the Lakota proposals, we can go back to that. TSC, we did $10,000 this summer of soil borings. I know both vendors had referenced a need for soil borings. Are those going to be incremental soil borings, or the 10 grand that we've already done going to cover that?
So not to go forward to come back, but the $45,000 that were spent already for Space Co. The additional $27,000 is to finalize those designs, put in the drainage that's part of that, and then interwork that with the slope for the constructional engineer to tie back that grade. So that's the extra $27,000, is to take that from a design concept through construction documents, all the way to getting it into a bid package with specifications that would go into the spec book for that. So that's the additional $27,000. So it's a lesser cost than you might see for other elements of this. The TSC soil borings, as you identified, we did soil borings at both locations that were identified from Space Co. to further on the work that we had discussed, and that was noted to be motion to be included as part of the project design. The access ramp on the north side of Elder, as well as the ADA ramp. We did not take soil borings lakeward of the seawall because we didn't know where those elements were going to land ultimately. So that's where, as it's noted in Matt's proposal, or in the Red Barn proposal, there might be additional soil borings required for the structural engineers to understand the soil depths for the amount of steel that's going to be needed to be able to make sure these structures are sound and designed properly for our lakefront environment. So the 10,000 work that's already been done is good work, and that's going to continue to be used on this project. Any additional soil borings that we need eastward of the Toilet Bluff would be an exception to this, and that'd be another cost that would be incurred. Once the design is finalized, we can then select a number of soil borings and the depths based on that design, and then get a proposal from TSC or whoever we need to perform that work for us.
This kind of goes to one of the larger questions is, we're looking at Elder separate from Centennial, and we don't have, in my view, like a complete plan for the whole space, and we don't know how the middle is going to piece together. So right now we have a plan for the left arm for Elder, and then, remove the pier, potentially remove the steel groins that are out there, like who knows? But, it's definitely a concern that there's not larger modeling to see, is that design actually gonna keep the sand in? Because, I feel like even though I'm not a coastal engineer, from what I've seen, if we just build the left side, it's not going to keep the sand, we take out those other things, it's not going to keep the sand in at Elder. It's going to be like the southern side of Lloyd, where, the water is closer, because we have not.
So to further that point, as far as the overall design and how we're doing this in a step-phased approach, where we're looking at Elder, Centennial, independent of a large overall project. Our overall project is very similar in design to what we're presenting now. The modeling wasn't necessarily completed at that time. There was no modeling completed. We went on the coastal experts to tell us if this was going to perform as it did, as they are same process that we used for Lloyd by their design. So when we look at Elder and the arm where it's at, you're correct, the pier is identified to be removed. there has been discussions, does that get shortened, so there is an element of the pier as it relates to a elevated boardwalk space, or is it removed entirely? The south steel of Elder, that is abutted to the 261, was identified to stay. We pulled out the little small nub, as it's been identified, the stone growing at the end of that, as an element for now, to take into consideration the future design of what that might be if that's interconnected. During some preliminary discussions, there has been suggestions of potential washout and what that might occur if we don't line that with some type of stone to break that reflected wave energy. So that's something else that will come out of this work and be better understood on how that will work. As far as that, the cell of Elder, the height of the stone, the length of the stone, how far out does it go, what's the elevation, what's that in relationship to the low lake level, what's that relationship to the high lake level, what's our risk tolerance for loss of sand, what's our sand selection as far as the size of sand. Those are all elements that get pulled together with the understanding of how we want this beach to work. The elements for that, we're going to be able to address our current issues of the eroded heaving blankets that are in front of the beach house that are causing the closure as we speak. We'll be able to refocus the stormwater in a better capacity with new improvements upstream of that. And we're jumping forward again here, I apologize, but in Burke's proposal, he is going to redo the modeling upstream that he's done and presented before to make sure that there are no impacts upstream of this service as well. And you know, that's another concern that we've heard from the board. So addressing all those concerns.
But in our proposal, it says they're not doing the hydrodynamic modeling. So that's like,
Apples and
Hydro-
oranges.
in terms of though
Different
understanding the
elements.
sand and the
Sure.
stone and like, how is that modeling happening?
That modeling is not proposed at this time. Different people have different perspectives on that. When we've had conversations with Shabika in the past, they're, to be perfectly honest, they're like, don't waste your money. It's in your size and scale and the direction and the length that we're building for, you're not gonna have the washout from the northeastern storms that are gonna be the most aggressive to the site. It's not worth spending the $50 to $75 up to $100,000 to do that, to solidify something that is a proven design in this, in this environment. Matt Wright had a similar approach. He's like, we could do it, it's your dime, but I wouldn't necessarily warrant it. His perspective, it wasn't warranted for the size and scale of this project. Once again, based on the design parameters and what we're looking for, he would suggest that it's not needed. We're not obligated by any permitting agencies to do that. It's more or less a faith of insurance, but it's only so accurate.
I'm just thinking like Forest Park Beach, I think had to be completely redone, not that long. That's not
Rosewood.
like a Rosewood. No, but I think Forest Park also had to be redone.
It did, yeah.
So, I mean, Rosewood had to,
Different elements and different designs. Once again, we have a very shallow sand system here. Rosewood initially was designed by Baird, then it was further designed by GZA, and then it was ultimately implemented, and it still failed. And the reason that I understand it was failed, from what it was explained to me, was the slope of the beach that they were trying to sustain was too aggressive, and the sand content they used was too small. That's the way I understand it. But there was two other professional firms that helped with that design, and at the end, it still had its own issues.
so, I mean, would they say that these are good discussions to have with the experts. Would they say that our beach is more similar than in profile to Illinois State Beach?
I would have to ask
You know
that
what I'm
question.
saying?
Yeah.
But I still feel that it's a gap that we're not, like, even to spend, $50,000 or $75,000, like, it's a $12.5 million project. It to me still feels very piecemeal.
We can bring that forward to the board on what that looks like for a cost and what their suggested benefit of that cost is, and then the board can make a decision if they'd like to move forward with that practice. It's not omitted, it's just not included.
I want to make sure there's questions and answers and give everybody the opportunity to speak.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Want to give someone else a chance?
Please keep going.
I'll hold my Lakota questions until
Sure.
we get to those. Well, I guess this is just similar to the hydrodynamic modeling, just we're separating Elder and Centennial, how will we know if the whole system will perform if we don't have all the pieces?
once again, it's based on the current infrastructure. You know, the steel grinds that we have in place, those are systematic to the success that we've seen thus far, and they're gonna be continued to be successful until we decide if those are gonna come out, then we need to react with some kind of center T or breakwater, offshore breakwater in the center of this as a combined element. We can't advance that discussion until we have the ability to build in front of 261, and at this point, I was directed to make sure that we stick to our property. So at this point, it's being considered, but it's just being considered in the background to make sure this works collaboratively in the future, but we're not designing those specific elements as part of this.
All right, go back and forth. David? Want to go next?
I mean, we need to have a lot more conversation about these contracts. That's my view. We got a big one from Lakota. We got Red Barn. I want to move forward. I believe it's the best thing to do. We're pretty good at budgeting here. We really are. I would guess that you were shocked at how high this came in at versus we got a 250 and
I was hoping that we were gonna be able to use a lot more of what we had done previously.
Right.
And based on the conversations, unfortunately, it's,
so for me to get, I'm not saying, listen, this is a known unknown for me. I know, I don't know. And for me, I need to have a meeting with Costa or a conversation with Red Barn, to get more comfortable. I think the number seems really big to me. I mean, but I don't really even, you could talk for an hour, but I wouldn't understand what the hell you're saying. So, I need a meeting. I could be meeting with you and John and Warren and someone about, why the hell is this $850,000?
so one of my thoughts, we wanna get Elder done. We got Elder budgeted. Let's continue moving forward with Elder. Let's take a look and let's hold off on.
Before you make any summary statements, I
Sure.
want to give all board members.
Sure.
Okay, go.
Yep.
There's a question there, yes, no. Colleen?
Well, first of all, thank you for everything you're doing here, because this looks like an awful lot of crap. So, it's most appreciated. I'm going to kind of pigtail Commissioner Rapp's question on the 3D hydrodynamic modeling. And the reason is, I have infuriated this board with my comment. I'm going to make it one more time. I do not see how affiliated parties can be truly neutral and independent on a peer review. And what we have here is, at Lloyd, you know, we have Shabika as the prime, Red Barn as the sub. Here, I understand, we have Red Barn as the prime, Shabika now as one of the subs, along with Westwood.
Clear structure,
Okay.
correct.
It would seem to me that what we don't have, and I'll infuriate everyone, please don't get angry. What we don't have is what I would consider to be a true coastal engineer who did 3D hydrodynamic modeling. In other words, sat at a computer screen, not the linear modeling with algebraic formulas, but actually models that are already in existence right now. And took it and would be able to see sand migration, would be able to look at, you know, pollution, and also would build in options for size, height, width of strong breakwaters. And so, you know, I was somewhat disappointed that I did not see that in the Red Barn proposal. And if we're about to expend $850,000, you know, what's another 40 to do some actual modeling where you integrate science? And so that's a question. It is interesting, I will share with you, when I first met Matthew Wright, I met him at our open house. And one of the questions I asked him, I said, looking at this design, he was, you know, at the board with the current Elder Light design. I said, how would you proceed? Would you do marine construction or would you do land-based? And immediately, without thinking, he said to me, oh no, this has to be marine construction because you're gonna ruin your infrastructure. So it's interesting to hear how his view on that has changed, and I'll ask you, do you know why he has had this sudden change in opinion?
He is open to either form of construction based on the last discussions I've had with him on this subject matter. His concerns are the wear and tear on the community. We've seen the amount of trucks come through here at Lloyd. Yes, there is a disturbance to that. There is some disturbance to the community, but I think it was done in a very clean and productive manner where there wasn't a whole lot of issues with that. The ability to work this from a marine standpoint versus a land standpoint in a shallow system, it's working days that you potentially have or don't have. A lot of times you have less working days. Your cost for barge with fuel costs drives that project pretty astounding. The additional depth or the shallowness of that area at Elder and Centennial is very shallow land, so your barge weight has to be reduced, so there's more barge trips per run of what tonnage you can put on there. After understanding some more of those dynamics and understanding the site, granted, when he came to the 21st, that was his real, besides the discussions that we've had preliminary, that was the first real vision that he had of what this project is in totality and looking from board to board and understanding history.
Can you
So
add to
he's
that
open
the
to that.
stormwater piece, the
That-
stormwater construction? element?
Sure. And the other piece is, of course, the stormwater component as well, and understanding that how that's built and the dynamic of that build as well. Of whether we put a ceiling to support that, or if it's just the pipes in there to be able to build the bedding that's required for that. Those are also drivers to this project in consideration to that point. So those are things that, once again, have been revisited. The ability to do that and the ability to reduce operational costs for bidding and the amount of potential bidders that's opened up for this work is something also to be considered as well. The ability to build this from land opens you up to 10 times, if not more, the amount of potential bid package that can go out there for people to respond to versus if this is only solely marine based, there's probably only probably a handful of contractors that can perform the service.
Do I understand that if we are fortuitous enough to secure 261, that by Mr. Wright's proposal, that will be an additional cost and there will have to be a change order?
If we are to build and design another piece to this element that is separate and independent of what we're doing, then yes, but that would be any proposal of work that's currently proposed.
I have to just throw my comments in with Commissioner Seaman and with Commissioner Rapp. I think we need to do a little more work trying to understand this, and I would very much like to sit down with Matt Wright and you and another commissioner, so we're not wasting, valuable staff time, and just kind of explore some additional questions. Again, I'm a huge advocate for bringing in and don't get angry with me, a true coastal engineer who would do the computer 3D hydrodynamic modeling and would really love to see a subcontractor who truly was neutral and independent brought in to perform that function. So, and I've talked about that.
Nikki, gonna weigh in? Are you with us, Nikki?
I'm with you. Mine would be short and sweet. I know everyone, you get a number and you get sticker shock by just looking at the number and then not understanding it. Once you get the understanding of that number and truly understand the scope and the person who proposed it, that sheds a lot of light. So, if David, Cynthia, Colleen, if you want to have that kind of sit down with Matt Wright, by all means do so. But be prepared for the answers. Marketplace says this thing is anywhere from 7 to 10%. He's somewhere around 5 to 6%. So that's a key indicator for me. Market 7 to 10. So it's not like, although we all get a bit stunned by the number is the number, and it's not like it's double that. Excuse me. In terms of doing doing water modeling, if you want to get a price for it, I don't know what the real true benefit of that is, other than a peace of mind thing. So, geez, we're worried about, the cost of this proposal. Well, let's toss pick a number, $80, $90, $100,000 to do modeling, for it to say, yeah, your design's good. It's not like this is Red Barn's first project or Shabika's or any of the other consultants we've talked to here. There have been numerous projects like this done on Lake Michigan and certainly on the North Shore. So, if the board, has a concern and wants to do hydraulic modeling or at least investigate it, I would say, fine, let's get a proposal to do that. Get an opinion from the people you are getting proposals from as to the worthiness of that exercise, and then you can make a decision. But I'm all for going forward. If we decided not to shave when we started this conversation almost 2 years ago, Gillette would be out of business. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Eric?
Thanks, Warren. Costa, great summary, really well put together, so thank you. That cost delta is incredibly unfortunate, right? But here we are. So, what do you ought to do? Like, it is what it is, and I think we need to digest that and ultimately get comfortable with it. I recognize Commissioner Root's comments around Red Barn and Shabika, but I think back to Lloyd, right? And I was commissioner when we executed Lloyd. We put the staff in charge of it, and from my point of view, it's been executed flawlessly. Costa has the cell failed at Lloyd? We did it via road. We built it via transport, not marine-based. Did we have any infrastructure fail during the building of Lloyd?
We anticipated the landing area where the trucks were dumping the stone to fail, and we prepaved that, and that was part of the project. That was an ancillary cost of, I want to say, around $80,000, which is a lot cheaper than the $2 million delta it was to be very done. And that was saving a lot of time as well. And the time piece is another thing that I'm thinking about.
Thank you. I recognize they're different projects, folks, but they are very similar. And they have a lot of commonalities that I think we're failing to identify. And we've got the right people aligned with it. We have the right staff leading the charge. And we've done it. And we've seen what happened. Back at Lloyd, the marine-based conversation was $2 to $3 million more. And frankly, at the time, we debated it, but it was a cost issue. That was just not an option. And in a community where we've got trucks going up and down Willow and Hibbard, we've got trucks going all around New Trier East, I do not see the big deal, just like I experienced when I was living here during the Lloyd construction. We barely experienced it, despite living very close to Sheridan Road. Any challenge? As for the hydraulic work, do you think that makes a difference and we can find some dollars in the budget? So be it. I just don't, I feel like we have the body of work in front of us that we can go down and look at every single day with some adjustments, heights, and things that we've learned along the way. But that's my point of view.
I'll go, because I think you have more subject matter expertise, but, I think I have 2 basic themes in the work that I have tried to do on this board. I believe I have some subject matter expertise in the finance area, and I believe other people have subject matter expertise in terms of construction. And I know Vicki is a construction manager, Warren does construction projects, and Costa is specifically focused on maintaining our beaches and has done successfully done specific work for our beaches. And so I think his work is extremely pertinent. And then together with the 3 partners, Shabika, Red Barn, Burke, Baird, I think we have a body of information regarding cost structures for projects, regarding practices that are useful and necessary and practices that are not. And just like people have to trust me when it comes to the finance side of the equation, as I explain and walk people looked at 14 different managers and potential managers and why we picked Piper Sandler, why we picked Wintrust. I think I have to trust them and their experience, and I think they've spent an enormous amount of time explaining it. Like Eric, I had the benefit of going through Lloyd, and we learned some things at Lloyd, and we're applying those things. We're applying the height of the stone, we're applying the views, we're applying those things in terms of costs that we know to be true for marine base versus land that were true then. Is this more expensive than we expected? Yeah. Is it within the range of the size of the overall project budget? Yes. Is it expensive to wait? Yes. Is this the incremental path that we identified we would take if we didn't execute on the land swap? Yes. Should we get Elder done? Yes. So my vote is, having looked at these contracts and trusting the people who are experts in these areas, my general vote is going to be to support these because we need to go forward and we need to get Elder open and we need to get it fixed. That's how I feel.
Thank you for all the work that you've done. I know it's a heavy lift. I will state unequivocally, I was stunned by Red Barn's numbers. Way higher than I anticipated. I had stayed, as you know, pretty far away from this process, wanting Costa and staff to run an independent process in the selection. And yet, when I saw the proposal, I asked if we could convene a phone call between Mickey, who has subject matter expertise, myself, Costa, Matt Wright, and Red Barnes. We spent, close to an hour going through Matt's proposal, trying to understand why it is what it is. First, I think we should understand the differences between Lloyd and Elder and Centennial. Lloyd was an all-stone project. There was no steel. That means there's a lot less structural engineering. Lloyd had an existing access road, so we didn't have to worry about managing the slopes going down. Lloyd had an existing pier that provides protection from the north. We just had one little node. So the Elder and Centennial projects are different than Lloyd, although the end result will be very similar. Lloyd, we contracted with Michaels out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They're the largest general contractor in the state of Wisconsin. They have cornered on the market of stone, having purchased a whole bunch of quarries. They were also selected, I believe, by the state of Illinois for the Illinois Beach State Park, a $69 million contract, which is going to keep them very busy. So, availing ourselves of a land-based project that we can open bid to a variety of qualified vendors is prudent. You've already heard about the cost differential between land versus sea. Now, design build versus the traditional route of plans and specs, open bid. When we embarked on this, we had a very good relationship and a very good outcome at Lloyd. So we elected to re-up with Lakota, Shabika, and we used Michaels for the preliminary structural design. And there are many advantages to a design, build approach in construction. One of the risks is that you in essence, pre-select subject to certain conditions, and Steve would guide us through that process. But we were able to advance the plan that was previously prepared, utilizing Michael's in-house services. If they're going to build it, they can stamp their own drawings with licensed professional engineers. We get good advice from Shabika and Lakota on design. That was a very cost-efficient approach. That is not the approach that this board has chosen to take for Elder and Centennial. Thus, we need to prepare a highly detailed set of plans and specifications. That is what you get with a professional engineer, Matt Wright, Red Barn, going out to his preferred structural engineer to provide those services, integrating that with the other experts, be it Thomas Burke or Space Code. Matt Wright stepped up and said, I will coordinate all of these documents into one bid package so that we can go out. Now, hopefully, with a professionally prepared bid package, we can elicit a stronger pool of bidders and drive that ultimate construction cost down. Why do you use a broker? Because you get more bids. Why do you go plans and specs? Because you get more bids, you can drive the construction cost down. Yes, it's an upfront investment. Hopefully, we'll recoup some of that on the buyout. Now, here's the other thing that we have to acknowledge: inflation. We did Lloyd, was a different world. I can tell you, being in the world of construction, I know of projects that 2 years later are 30, 35% more expensive. In this type of construction, we're heavily reliant on fuel. Yeah, diesel is a big expense, heavy equipment. It's a lot to it.
I want to give one data point. Nutria's demolition costs were 40% higher than budget. Just remember that. I mean, Nutria's project is a good parallel.
I don't want this to be, bad budgeting. I want people to understand there are a lot of factors that influence this. Now let's go to the modeling. We could spend a couple $100,000 on modeling. Honestly, who's the best weatherman in Chicago? Anybody? Tom Skilling. Why? Because he's been doing it for decades. Yes, he's got computer models, but he's also got decades of experience understanding this. We have in Charlie Shabika, a man who has spent his life's work studying this specific section of Lake Michigan. He is a geologist. The process of erosion is a geological process. That is what we're seeking to arrest. When we build things into the lake, we need civil engineers with the coastal expertise. That is Matt Wright. When we discharge stormwater, we engage experts such as Thomas Burke of Seabell, who the MWRD goes to for answers. We have engaged a highly qualified team of experts. We have suggested that they should work collaboratively to come up with the most appropriate design, understanding the phased approach. We have a 75-year-old pier with a stormwater discharge that is falling apart, literally falling apart. We now have a new ordinance in Chicago. If that appears to be open, we shall have railings around it. That's going to further obstruct the views and make it less aesthetic. It's 75 years old. We have a 100-year-old brick storm sewer that runs from from Sheridan Road out to the Bluff that is part of this replacement. The estimated cost for the stormwater component, which is a village-owned component, is about $1.5 million. That's a delayed infrastructure improvement by the village. They've been waiting for us to decide on the design, recognizing that it's necessary. We have steel groins that date back to the 1950s and 60s that are installed out there. We have wooden piles that are still in there from the 1950s, presumably associated with the sanitarium that was there. You can see them now that the water's dropped, the wood piles sticking out. So our infrastructure improvements date from the 40s and 50s to the 1980s when we had the high water. That steel sheet piling that was installed at Centennial is the reason why we still have Centennial Park. So kudos to the board who took that step to drive those sheet piles. We have a mishmash. We have 100 feet of sheet piling to the north end of Elder. The rest of the 300 feet or so is a mishmash of gabion blankets, gabion baskets, some steel, some concrete, but we noticed undermining in the high water condition. We're vulnerable there. We cannot in good conscience continue to build out without addressing the exposure at Elder. That's where our concentration needs to be. So the $6.7 million we have allocated at Elder is towards an improvement that will last, Matt Wright suggested easily 75 years. I would tell you, you put stone and steel in there, it's going to be 100+ years. So you need to amortize that expenditure over the next 100 years plus. We have to replace the storm sewer. We have an existing line of steel that separates Elder from 261 Sheridan. That's proposing to remain in place until we get a determination. What happens at Centennial is for future discussion. I think as painful as it is, my recommendation is that we take the hard work that staff's done, we engage the professional engineer, recognizing that we will get a complete bid set of documents and be able to competitively bid this and move forward and finally deliver results to the community.
Warren, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
We keep referencing our most venerated geological expert. What I don't understand is why we have not moved forward with the board decision of October 27th, and why we do not have a separate proposal from Shabika, and why we don't have a separate contract with Shabika, and why this is rolled in under Matt Wright. I have to tell you, I feel an awful lot better to see that proposal as a separate proposal. I feel an awful lot better knowing that Matt then was truly not combined, but was neutral and would be coming in and doing a neutral review. I don't understand why it was structured this way, and I know I've wasted a lot of time asking this question, but I again ask this question. Let's get a proposal from Shabika.
I don't think Shabika's advice would be any different if you were contracted separately or as a sub-consultant to Matt Wright. What we're doing is we're putting experts that have different areas of expertise in the same room at the same time to hash out the best solution. We understand that there are trade-offs between the height of the stone and the exposure. We committed to a road to get vehicles down to the beach for multiple reasons. That decision was made a long time ago. So we can do land-based construction. So we can replenish sand as required if needed from the road, and then we can get emergency and maintenance vehicles down to the beach. Food trucks. So having access down to the beach is a very important thing, not the narrow, steep path that we currently have that doesn't accommodate larger vehicles. But again, I go back to putting these experts in the room at the same time to collaborate. That's how we get the best possible outcome. We understand there are trade-offs. Matt Wright's comment was, don't build at 583. You're gonna get many storms that wash right over at 583, and you're gonna have to replenish that sand. He routinely designs municipal projects to 591, 592, where they're not concerned about views. So the discussion that we can have amongst the board here, which we've already had, is we value views over the potential of having some washout. If we have a road, we can replenish the sand. What we can't do is bring back the views if we go higher than 585, higher than the existing Elder Pier.
Then why are we not considering at all the submerged reef? That was a key driver in that decision.
The submerged reef is not, in my opinion, an independent discussion. We have a stormwater pipe that has to be embedded within the groin to be discharged. To be relocated and discharged. That decision was made, first of all, the design direction was an outgrowth of many conversations dating back to the Lakefront Master Plan, to 2016. It's contemplated in there. It was further then evolved from that into the plan that was presented last year, and it remains a central feature. Eliminating the pier, relocating, and putting that storm discharge further out.
I'm hopeful, but again, this is another known unknown, that as Warren was describing, and I'm sure Costa you're familiar with, that the implementation budget line of $5 million, as well as potentially relocation of stormwater for $1.5 million, that with all the value that we're extracting from Red Barn, that we can get something on the back end where we can actually come in below budget. Because when I'll be off the board, but I am concerned that if we don't get it on the back end, and the investment that we're making in this wonderful golf course, as well as all the other operating real concern, unless we get some donations, maybe the village could participate in.
There have been conversations with the village about them paying for the stormwater relocation, of which that is their infrastructure. The village has said, you guys needed to come up with the design, then we can have that conversation.
Yeah, we need money from the village.
Agreed?
So, listen, I wanna move forward. I wanna keep, it's 3 yards and a cloud of dust. That's the way we do it as a park district these days, okay? And that's okay. So I don't want, in my concern about where it's coming in, I don't wanna be an obstructionist. I wanna keep moving forward. I'm just like, listen, we've gotta get it. I don't wanna be like the federal government. I wanna get that $400,000 from someplace else. And if it's in the ultimate implementation, God, I hope we get it, because we're gonna need it. So, I'll shut up. Thank you.
Costa, do you want an opportunity to respond? Do you want to respond?
I go back to what you may have said, I know you've said it, sorry. Others have said it. We have Lakota, Red Barn, Shabika, Burke, Westwood, Spaceco, and Baird.
Well, Baird is not ours.
I know, but we'll probably lean in.
Right.
We've done things where we've sold the library park to help provide capital. We've done work, we've done everything we can to provide a base of financial certainty, if you will, to move forward on Elder. We voted to move forward on Elder. You did.
Yep.
So I'm respectful that we have financial concerns, right? I'm respectful that there are options to look at, modeling that Commissioner Ruth mentioned, but from my perspective, I think Costa's done a great job to get to where we're at. It has been information that's been provided, albeit technically correct, within 48 hours of the board meeting. It came right at the very end, and I respect that you may need more time, but I trust the process with the experts. I think they are working on our behalf in our best interests. We're working to provide for the community and thinking of their best interests in this process. I'm trying to find where the weak link is. Everything adds up.
Okay, question. Steve Adams, have you been through this contract with a fine-tooth comb?
Yep, our firm wrote it.
That's why it was delayed. It was why it doesn't get much fun.
Not the dollars, but the contract form.
It was why we were expecting it on Friday, and they kept looking at it and negotiating with Red Barn and going back and forth, and that's why it came in on Tuesday. It was expected to be available Friday, and I give a lot of credit
Does that
to.
concern you from a vendor standpoint? It was
No.
expected on Friday, but it came on Tuesday right before it.
Because we have,
No.
because there's nothing else going on, that would be concerned. We have a lot of other things going on, including Lakota, Christopher Burke, and there's a lot of.
Nothing's happened.
Costa,
Is
do you
there a
want to
reason
respond?
why Matt Wright wasn't invited, was he invited to our board meeting?
Typically, you don't have the vendor in the room.
Because Shabika and Lakota were both in the room when the board talked about their Lloyd contracts.
They might have been. Currently, no. He was not.
He wasn't asked.
Okay, okay.
So.
Costa, do you want to respond to any of the other comments that we made?
May I ask a question of council? I read the contract for the first time today, and I want to refer you to section 212. You have, in my opinion, an ambiguity in your indemnity, and the way that you can quickly fix it is if you will look at page 8, the first line of page 8, you have Red Barn's agreement to indemnify the park, except to the extent solely caused by the negligence or omission of owner. And then it immediately goes on to say all the other things that I think you want Red Barn to pick up as far as an indemnity. My recommendation to you is you take that, except to the extent solely caused by negligence or omission of owner, and you put it at the end of the indemnification section, because it's really confusing and it's ambiguous as to what Red Barn is gonna do and what they aren't.
I understand what you're saying.
Thank
You can
you.
make that change.
Thank you for that, and I have not read this contract with great care. If it was done very quickly, maybe you need to take another look at it.
Well, I mean,
I think it was done laboriously.
Kosta can probably tell you more about the preparation of the contract than I can, because he worked with my partner, Nicole Karras, on it. I reviewed it at the end of the process, but, I think if you want to approve it, if your plan is to approve it tonight, we can approve it subject to any final modifications by council. That would give us an opportunity to talk, Colleen, if you've got other concerns you want to take a closer look.
The only
And
other
if we
comment
have
I have-
anything else, and I'd like to address that, because I think that's important, what you raised so far. So be happy to do it that way.
The only other comment I have is when I looked at the Lakota contract, Lakota very neatly breaks out all of the remuneration going to subcontractors.
Yeah.
It would be nice to see that also. If we continue to insist that Shabika must be a subcontractor and not their own proposal, then I'd like to see that broken out too, so we know.
That's fair. I mean, I did like that with Lakota as well.
Yeah.
They line itemed it and
They do it, you know exactly who's getting what.
but I don't know if that's how it really works.
Kosta?
So as it relates to the fee structure, I can talk you through the fee structure for both subcontractors. I know exactly where those dollars are coming in. So as it relates to Shabika for phase one and phase one of both projects, their cost is $16,000 for each initial phase. So 16 for Elder, 16 for Centennial. The permitting for Elder is at $60,000. The permitting for Centennial is at $70,000. That's all in for everything, and that's a direct pass-through from what Matt received to the Park District. And that's how those elements are broken out.
Say those two numbers again.
Sure.
60 for the permitting at Elder.
60 for the permitting at Elder,
Mhm.
and 70 for the permitting at
Got it.
Centennial.
Thank you.
Some of the work has already been done for Elder, so once again, work product has been completed to try to recoup some of those costs, taking into consideration. If you go back to the permit, that we worked with them before, we contracted for $74,000 for the permit for Elder Centennial is what we had approved at that time. So that's just in comparison. And then there's, on the front side for the review piece and to help them apply and be part of the process for the initial review and plan design, those are the allocations for their fee structure. The structure,
I'm sorry, did you say 16 for Shabika for phase one on Elder and phase one on Centennial?
independent 60 each.
Right, nice.
And
Okay.
then for the structural component, it was $117,000 for that structural component for Elder. And then at Centennial, that structural component was just under $100,000. So there's $217,000 rounded for construction, or structural components for structural engineering that is subcontract out to third party.
Does the structural component at Centennial include the ADA path, or is that being done by others?
The structural, all the structural work is included for Centennial. Matt's doing all the upstream civil work on that project. So as you'll see when we get to the second phase of this work, when we get to the Lakota review, you'll see how that's broken out independently. So when you look at phase one for Red Barn, for Elder, his work scope, and this is rounded, is about $228,695. That's for Matt's time with his draftsperson, incidentals in regards to insurances and so forth. And then for Centennial, it's $232,000, $375,000. Once again, those are rounded. They're not exactly to the dollar, but rounded.
I just
Let's
want-
put those in the contract.
Can that be shared? Yeah, can it be
Yep.
shared? And everybody
I think
can
we
have-
should.
No problem.
I just want a point of clarification. We contracted with Red Barn, and Red Barn.
We haven't yet.
We're
well,
proposing
no,
to
in
contract with
theory, we
Right.
sent out this RFQ, and we had 4 people pick up documents and 3 people submit bids. It turns out that each of those bidders was probably going to select Shabika as their sub anyway. Fair enough, they revealed that, but we contracted with Red Barn, and they chose Shabika at their sub. It's not us insisting, it's not us driving that process. Shabika's the guy. He's the guy.
With all due respect, GCA and Baird came in with their own independent proposals signed by principals of each of the engineering firms. They had teams where they had more than one engineer if something happens to Mr. Wright. The proposal that came in for Red Barn was a joint proposal. It was signed collectively by Charlie Shabika and by Matthew Wright. So to me, that is the distinction. And I've irritated this board. I have a problem with it. I've had a problem with day one with this joint proposal. I think we had a motion where we agreed there'd be an independent proposal by Shabika. That did not happen. I've said enough. I've written my memos. The board has chosen to go another way. I still have great discomfort with this. And that's the distinction that I make. With respect to others, selecting Shabika, how do we know this?
John Shabika indicated to us, and he wrote in a letter to us, that he was approached by each one of the firms when it was asked, hey, basically, is this a sole, or did other people approach you around this? And it was identified that both Baird and GZA approached Shabika.
So John
to join
Shabika
them.
has said this. This is the same John Shabika that went out of the way in this joint proposal to single out an unnamed single commissioner and make disparaging comments. I have some difficulty here. Thank you.
So, anybody else want to comment on this before we act on the motion to consider this contract?
I would just suggest that you give us some latitude to make changes to the contract. So make it subject to final legal approval. Can you do that? So I can accommodate the request.
Absolutely.
And we are doing, sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
Costa, do you have any recommended modifications?
Where we're at with the projects and the fact that we're running two independent projects, and we have budgeted based on our initial cost estimates that we ran based on our unit takeoffs for Elder 2A Stone Light. We have $600,750,000 allocated in the budget currently. We have $1,090,000 budgeted for improvements to Centennial. Those are small improvements to start the path to get down to Centennial, not necessarily take on breakwater. From a staff's perspective, and this was based on the last, I would say probably within the last 10 hours, I've been pondering this more and more based on the information that I've seen come in from commissioners, discussions that I've had, trying to figure out what's the middle ground here? What can we do to incrementally step this forward so we're not all in invested? Granted, if they don't perform a service, we're not paying for a service, so we're not necessarily all in, but we're signing off that we're taking this on. We sign off all in for Elder, and then we take a stepped approach to Centennial, where we sign off on phase one of Centennial until the board decides on that vision that is the work product of that first phase that they would support. Then we can get cost estimates, look at a budget, and then continue down. It's possible that cost might change because the parameters are unknown right now. They're based on subject matter that was discussed at the 21st. That is a broad spectrum that included a lot of steel and a lot of stone. We haven't finalized that. So the ability to drop that back down is potential. But once again, that's just a way to possibly soft step this a little bit to move forward. So we're being mindful of our dollars spent for what we're trying to complete 2023 and open in 24 for Elder, and then take a softer approach as we continue through this process for the board to decide on how they would like to move forward with Centennial based on the work product that they see. Just a thought.
We'd like to expand on that thought, to see if we could consider reducing a little bit more, to just consider the review concept and preliminary engineering design for 1A and the engineer compensation, like just the first step with Red Barn while we flush out some of these other questions. So not approving approving all of Elder for 421, but approving the first slug of 113,870, which would get you through these next rounds of meetings, and then would give us a couple more weeks to review in detail, finalize the contracts. There was another question that I had on the contract about, you know, if we terminate early or something, how is their payment schedule defined with Red Barn? So I think there's still some financial terms to consider and work through in terms of the contracting, and I
Actually,
personally.
Just to that specific point, I think there's language in there that addresses that the payment, the obligation is terminated at the time of at the effective date of the termination, and it's just a determination of how much work has been performed to that point, so there is language in there.
The counselor, there is, but my question is, it's a lump sum fee that is paid. And so how do you determine if there's a premature termination, what percentage of that?
We would be able to determine that from the scope of the work and the amount of work completed. And, you know, I mean, if there was a disagreement, you know, we'd have to hire an expert, go through that process if we were in court.
There are listed 4 phases.
Right,
within
it's
this
kind of
contract.
broken down.
Yes.
Be pretty easy to determine, to be honest, but I wouldn't see it getting to
I want to make this point, that when you engage with an engineer, that engineer's work product is his product. If you terminate, you start over, because rarely will you find an engineer that is willing to pick up somebody else's work and put their stamp on it, right? So when you make it, we went through a selection process, and it's important to understand that we have obligations associated with that selection process. We rely upon staff to conduct a fair and open process in conformance with the, Illinois state statutes, and they selected Red Barn. They identified Red Barn as the most qualified. So now we've negotiated a contract. That's the process that was outlined by, and supervised or overseen by our council. So we can't just say, oh, let's commit part of the way, and then we can decide if we're gonna go the rest of the way, because if you don't decide the rest of the way, well, then the money you spent isn't necessarily.
But I would suggest that we consider tabling. We were assured 2 weeks ago that we would have ample time to review things, and we received them as a board at the same time as members of the public. So I don't feel that I had ample time to review things, even though I was diligent in my review and formulated questions. But I feel like for an $800,000 investment, that was not what we committed to. That was not even in line with our process of making sure that by 5 p.m. Friday, board members have the substantive material to prepare for their meetings on Thursday. So I'm respectful, but this is a big commitment. This is a lot of money. It doesn't have some of the things that I hope to see as a board member.
But
So
I just can't stop. I can't stop talking. I'm generally a risk-averse person. I don't like risk. But part of this process, we have to assume some risk. We are not going to know everything with certainty. It's just never going to happen. You may as well stay in your freaking closet and get deliveries from freaking some Uber Eats. I thought that this job, as being a member of this board, would be pretty easy, because it looked pretty easy from the outside. This turned out to be miserable. We have to take risks. I don't love the fact that it's $400,000, but it is. We're moving forward. We should take a vote. Maybe it's just on the elder portion. We got to take votes. We got to keep moving forward. We've got to find the money somewhere. We've got to go to the village and get the money. Hopefully we get some donations. We've got to move forward. We could get hung up on 20 different risk items, and we'd never get anywhere. We've got to move forward.
I think we're not talking about risk as much as we are adequate time to explore further with staff the questions that we have. We have a meeting coming up here in early March. It is the committee of the whole, but I suspect that upon a motion of 2 commissioners, we can change that into a special board meeting. I mean, we're asking for 2 weeks here to have a little more time on an $850,000 forward with phase one here, with all due respect, Warren, to your issues, that, well, if you don't move on, you've lost that money. Well, we have spent how much? Over $330,000 in consultants on Elder Centennial to date. It's just a suggestion. I think it would be a good idea.
I've been in the real estate development business for 35 years. I've evaluated many, many contracts. This is what I do all the time, and I take personal risk, right? Personally guaranteeing projects. I take this very seriously. I think that it is so disappointing to me that we had such momentum coming off Lloyd. We had a great contractor in Michaels. We had a great working relationship. We were comfortable moving forward in a design build scenario that could have yielded tremendous savings to us. There was an opportunity to amend permits, but this board chose otherwise. We interrupted that process. We started over. We lost tremendous ground, and we also went into a tremendously inflationary period. And now we bifurcated this, so we have to do it in pieces. That's why this costs so much more, because many factors have influenced the cost. But it remains that Elder is closed. We have the best possible professional team assembled, and I believe it's time for this board to act.
Make a motion.
I move that we move to approve the contract as proposed, subject to final council review, including for Red Barn, Phase 1, Elder Lane Beach Project, a total sum of $421,695, broken down by phase as follows. Review and concept preliminary engineering design, $113,870. Final plan design and permitting, $80,650. Construction documents, $219,750. Bidding, $7,425. For Centennial Beach Project, total sum of $418,375, broken down by phase as follows. A, review and concept preliminary engineering design, $108,920. B, final design and permitting, $88,250. C, construction documents, $213,780. D, bidding, $7,425. My motion. Is there a second? Second. So, are there any amendments? All right.
I have an amendment, and that is that Red Barn will move forward to secure bids for 3D hydrodynamic modeling from independent subcontractors from Red Barn.
Is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
And I assume we vote on the amendment first?
Vote on the amendment first.
Any further amendments? All right, let's vote on the amendment. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Archambault,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
This is just the amendment.
It's the amendment to include hydrodynamic modeling.
to get bids.
To get bids for
Get
hydrodynamic
bids
modeling.
for, again, Red Barn to go get bids for hydrodynamic. Okay.
Yes.
Did he understand that?
Mickey, you
You're getting
understand?
you're getting a bid.
I get,
Yep.
Just get a bid.
yeah, you're gonna ask, I get proposal for hydrodynamic, forget the modeling. Yes, I understand. And yes is my answer.
Commissioner Rapp,
Yes.
Commissioner Root,
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman,
No.
Commissioner Kodo,
No,
and Commissioner James.
No.
Motion passes.
Motion passes.
Four.
Wait, what was it, Eric?
You said yes.
He said
I said yes,
Okay.
getting a bid.
Okay, all right. All right, now to the main motion, approving Red Barn's contract as proposed. Roll call,
Commissioner Archambault,
Subject to legal.
subject to legal, as proposed, which includes that subject to legal.
and did Commissioner Rapp, you want a breakout of the elements within the agreement as well.
That's part of the legal.
Right, okay.
We'll get that in there.
Commissioner Archambault,
Yes.
Commissioner Lusson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp,
No.
Commissioner Root,
No.
Commissioner Seaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kodo,
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we'll move on to consideration of the Winnetka Park District to work with the Lakota Group for the Elder Lane and Centennial Beach project.
Coach, do you want to take this one, the code piece?
Yeah.
Any discussion exactly?
Yeah, no problem. So as continuing on with this, and I think there's been some deliberation on this already, knowing that these work in conjunction with one another. To perform the services identified in the scope of work for the RFQ, we had reached out to the Lakota Group to continue on and put together a proposal with those identified scopes of services. Those identified scopes of services were broken down into two different projects as shown in the proposal. Project A for Elder Centennial Park and Project B for, Project A for Elder Lane Park and Project B for Centennial Park. Through their process, they did not identify the three phases broken out independently. They had put together professional service fees based on the scope of services needed to complete all three phases through that work. Identified in the proposal through the RFQ, the Lakota Group was essentially taking on the responsibilities of anything upstream of the toe of the bluff. So the steel as we know it, anything not including the steel that's upstream or due west. Bringing in with their services
Up,
from
you mean uphill?
uphill, yeah, so due west from the toe of the bluff to Sheridan Road and any elements that is part of that sequence of work. Those elements would include the service drive that's currently shown in or Concept 2A, the bluff work to restore the bluff, clean out invasives, tree work that needs to be identified for removals, fencing along with that, anything else, any other elements part of that, the connection of all the stairways or access points to the park site itself, the reworking of the roadway, the elements for the drive, and then the stormwater from Spaceco as it relates to the roadway and any land grading that needs to be done to capture that as part of this design. The stormwater elements themselves are going to be working in conjunction with Burke and Spaceco, because Spaceco worked with Burke to put together the initial design drawings that were submitted for permit. So that work was completed with Spaceco and Burke, and that's going to be a rekindled relationship between those two firms to keep moving forward in that capacity. So there's some overlap with the services that are providing in Lakota's proposal here, as well as the next scope of work that will be identified in the board packet as I forget which item number it is.
9.7.
9.7, thank you, through the Christopher Burke engineering proposal. Lakota's fees for this scope of work is $105,860 for Elder Lane Park. Spaceco service fees for that, for their civil engineering work is $27,000. And then Christopher B. Burke for their structural engineering department, working back with Najid, who we've worked with before on several projects, is $100,000 identified. The base project fee for professional services for Project A of Elder Lane Park is $232,860. There are reimbursable expenses identified to the tune of 4% at this time, but those are only used as needed, and that has been identified as $9,315 based on the current scope. Professional services for Project B, Centennial Park, once again is included with the Lakota Group of Landscape Architecture and Spaceco Civil Engineering. As we discussed previously, Centennial, there's been a lot more of the civil engineering work put on Matt's team to, if they're gonna work the project and just complete the project, there was less work done there to be able to hand that over for work product to continue on forward. So there is review from Spaceco and the Lakota. The Lakota team will be taking over the design aspects as it relates to the improvements for the dog park, the fencing to secure the dog park, the gate system, Ballard lights, things of that nature, as well as the Spaceco oversight of that, and additional work to tie that back together as part of the review phase of phase 1 of the project. That combined total was $82,740 with a reimbursable, once again, at 4%, coming in at $3,310. If the board would like, I can go through in greater detail of what that looks like. And I also have the professional engineering services for Space Co. with their proposal that they had submitted with the Lakota group as well to break down their work even further to show what that is. I did not include that at that time because they are a subconsultant to the Lakota group, but I have that available if the board would like to review that as well. Can I answer any questions that the board might have in regards to Lakota scope of work on, or their subconsultants on the project?
I'm happy to go first again, but if someone else wants to go.
first.
Okay. So what, for Lakota, what output should we expect to see as a board?
Sure.
So it'd be helpful if you could summarize that for some of these elements, like generally for the drawings, but
Yeah.
also for the bluff plans. Because I do feel like we've had a few contracts with bluff plans for Elder Centennial, and I just want to level set on what output we should expect. Yeah, like what are the deliverables and
Right, so working through the open house phase, once again with the timeline that was identified, moving to the March 18th date, they're going to be working with the project team to deliver all the material and boards that are required for the open house. There'll be attendants at the open house and be able to address any concerns or however we want to work that open house, if we want to have more opportunity or sit-down review sessions, or if it's going to be more boards. That dynamic still needs to be discussed further on how we want to fully engage the public through that process, but that takes in consideration the open house work, the initial review, bringing the team together as we've discussed, reviewing that product, taking that product, going back with their team, designing their work, because they are responsible for the drafts and the drawings for everything upstream of the steel, so due east, all the upland work and the work on the bluff itself. They'll provide and complete all the work product for that, and then we'll give those plans to Matt, which he'll combine into one site drawing. We'll ultimately come back to the board for approval as those incremental approval steps will be through the process.
okay.
Continuing from there, they'll work on the data stream to put together the bid drawings that are needed for the upstream work, the bid specifications, and then those will be given to Matt to complete the full bid package. There are ancillary pieces along with that. Parking lot resurfacing, new beach ramp access way for the beach, bluff access ramp in the roadway for the retaining walls, reconfiguration of the beach access staircase that's existing, that would be removed and re-identified and included with the new circulation paths as needed. The pedestrian pathway connections, the statue and the pedestal improvements, those might change. We want to keep that on site, but those might need to change a little bit based on the circulation. Bluff and park landscape improvements, site lighting elements, making sure we're taking in consideration the safety lighting as we always do with our projects, and then the upslope table work for the stormwater drainage connections for any drainage of that slope to make sure we're not causing erosions down through that. And then similarly for Centennial Park, like I said, that's a lighter touch. Dog beach securing area and layout for the dog beach itself. Considering their previous work with the Dog Beach Committee and what we've done thus far, we take some of that work product for some of the designs and what we've shown at the 21st, continuing that forward. Dog Beach gate and fence containment system, looking at that, identifying the equipment, identifying the best use of that space and how it's been identified, working with Matt and his team, identifying that location and how that's been installed. And then Bluff and Beach landscape improvements, and then site lighting elements are what's called out in their two specific scopes. There's consideration for additional work for the 8A stairway and access as needed, and then the project task schedule with the meetings are indicated as well. Both of these proposals, I know we've already passed the previous one, but both of these proposals are very heavy in meetings, so there's a lot of engagement, not only with the board in public setting, but also with the public through this process as the board deems necessary. So we made sure that we had that baked into this because we want to make sure that we're lockstep and being fully transparent every step of the way. So these are a heavy meeting, or both these scopes are very heavy in meetings, and part of that cost is driven by those meetings that have been identified too. Just a little bit more history.
So we could expect to see them occasionally at board meetings
Quite
presenting
frequently.
drawings
Quite frequently, yes.
with, removing, invasive mustard from the bluff, whatever.
There'll be
60
work
bucks for it,
product,
but I get like,
there'll be the work product that comes to the, the visual of what that's, how that's represented, whether it's the, the invasive list, or whether it's the actual design and what we're putting forward, whether it's what's been reviewed and decided for the distance on the dog park. Ultimately, that information will come back into a plan design that will be reviewed by the board and ultimately approved and, reviewed along the way. Reviewed up to approval, I should say.
so we should see some costed options coming through the process.
You're gonna see high level, and then as that project distills down and gets more focused, you're gonna see that get laser focused to the cost of what that project is gonna look like.
Okay. And
Once again, working within our budget limitations.
And will we get to a point where we have like a full park plan, or is Lakota constrained in elements that we have already decided?
We are looking to keep Elder Lane as it's proposed, Elder Lane, except for the additions that are included in this list. This isn't a master plan of Elder Lane Park. This is taking what we've got already and including our elements needed for this work into that plan. It's not redoing the playground, it's not redoing the parking lot as far as circulation, access, increased parking, what happens if we combine the two sites. That's not what's on the table. Like, it's basically looking at curb and gutter, if there's drainage improvements that are needed in the parking, and resurfacing. That's the parking improvements.
Should we add the food truck line item then into Lakota's scope?
From a high level,
Okay,
it'll be in there from a high level perspective, but then we need to talk about the infrastructure to support a food truck and the beach and that. So that's all part of the discussion through this process.
okay.
So that would be a next phase. To actually get a food truck at Beach Slope. To get a food truck on top, easy.
Yeah.
Get a food truck down below, that depends upon the ultimate design.
I just think that amenity has come up in the caucus surveys over and over and over, and that, in some ways, at the grand opening will be, an indicator of how fabulous we are, like Fall Fest. And with Lakota, are you able to just comment on, the extent of reuse that that this contract reflects from their previous work?
Once again, not specifically, because I don't know what the ultimate design will yield.
Okay,
It's starting with the base design that they helped create.
okay,
So I mean, from the work product standpoint, we're using and pulling as many elements that has been already completed as we can. The access road down and the work that Spaceco has done is being included. The work for the stormwater is being included. The overall laydown and concept that was reviewed in motion on the 27th of October of 2022 is being. So we're using as much work product as humanly possible, but dictated by what comes forward with those designs, heights, elevations, how do we address the gate baskets and the failing blankets on the beach? How was the best way to do that? Is that stone, is that steel, is that new baskets, what does that look like? It's gonna be completing that, putting that all together, and then ultimately figuring out how does this work as an overall design design to best get our, put our best forward efforts based on what our budget is. Just tying it all together.
While everyone else is gathering.
I'm glad that you go first, because you articulate some things that,
Others of us would, right?
indeed, you save some time for other questions, so I'm in good shape.
David, no questions? No. Colleen?
No.
Eric? Mickey?
No questions from me.
Gina? None from me. All right. I want a motion to approve the proposal prepared by Lakota Group. Cost for these services broken down per the park site, include the services for Lakota Group, Spaceco, and Christopher B. Burke Limited. Professional fees for Elder Lane Park and Beach, total $232,860. Broken down as follows: the Lakota Group, $105,860. Spaceco, $27,000. Christopher B. Burke Engineering Limited, Structural Engineering, $100,000. Professional fees for Centennial Park and Beach total $82,742. The Lakota Group, subtotal, Lakota Group $72,740, and Space Go $10,000. Staff is also including reimbursable expenses of 4% assumed for a total cost of $12,625. The total combined fee schedules presented by the Lakota Group is $328,225 for the Elder Lane Park and Beach project and the Centennial Park and Beach project, including services as listed in the proposal. That's,
So
I,
moved.
motion, okay.
So moved, sorry.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion made and second, roll call please.
Commissioner Lusson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp,
Yes.
Commissioner Root,
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Archambault,
Yes.
Commissioner Koto,
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Motion passes.
This is fun.
Okay. 9.7, consideration for the Winnetka Park District to work with Christopher B. Burke Engineering Limited, Elder Lane Park stormwater outfall relocation. Costa.
Warren, thank you. I'll be very brief with this one. It's pretty straightforward. Once again, as described in the board summary, we're looking to continue on with the stormwater design as it's been currently proposed, have a collaboration between Burke, Thomas Burke, and Matt Wright for the ultimate design and what that's going to look like, included in the design work completed by Matt Wright from Red Barn Engineering. Then once that's completed, that information then will be modeled as it's shown in their task structure for task 1 for scope of services to make sure that the upstream modeling as it was presented and modeled last with the two 36-inch discharges as originally proposed are not going to be affecting any upstream neighbors of the system. Make sure it's flowing in the capacity that it needs to, make sure it's got enough head pressure to clean the pipe out, and not have any backup concerns where there would be issues being addressed by the community itself. Furthermore, there'll be time reviewed with the village as it relates to the ultimate design that's completed. That design time will then be re-reviewed by the village's team, and then once approved to take it to the first phase of permitting, we will then continue on with permitting with MWRD. Ultimately, when this gets completed, we'll be able to have a permit in place to continue on with the process, and then at that point, those documents and drawings will then be able to be moved into Matt Wright's bid packet to then facilitate the bidding process to ultimately land on a bid for approval by the park board once we get to that point in time. Like I said, the modeling is for the not hydraulic dynamic as it relates to anything with the lake, but the upstream tributaries to make sure that they're not going to be ill affected by our design. That was done previously in review. That's going to be done yet again to re-review based on the final design that is ultimately landed on for this. I could probably go into a little greater detail. I don't know if I need to. There are 4 itemized task structures on here for the fee structure. Final location outfall structures and sizes. The fee for that is $3,200. MWRD GC, which is Greater Chicagoland area, per meeting submittal, that was $4,500. Expected meetings as they're listed in here, $7,500. And then if there's additional meetings beyond those that have been identified, that would be on T&M as needed. We were able to complete most of the meetings last time within their original scope. So I would suspect that we'd be in a similar suit here, but if there are additional meetings that are needed, that would be on T&M for Tom, or Thomas and his team, but currently I think we're going to be in good shape. So can I answer any questions that the board might have?
With respect to modeling, as I understand, Tom did modeling down to the toilet block and then he stopped. Is the intention he will do a, whatever you call, I call it backflow model from the terminus of the pipe?
The previous modeling was done from the terminus of the pipe based on the lengths of pipe that were going to be needed for the scope of work identified originally, I think.
But he never presented a written report on it, correct?
He did, and I have that. I thought that was distributed to the entire board. So I can
No,
make
we
sure that
never
let's clarify. Thomas Burke and Christopher Burke Engineering Limited prepared a study for the village many years ago that modeled this entire watershed area that leads to this discharge pipe. I think that's what you're talking about, that he's updating based upon that model to make sure that there are no adverse impacts.
Correct. So by relocating the stormwater discharge from its current outfall as we know it for the pier to the proposed outfall as we know it, we, or I shouldn't say we, but Thomas and his team identified the stick feet length that would be needed to take it through the breakwater, and the modeling was completed based on 2 parallel 36-inch discharges running out that length of pipe with the head pressure, length, chambers that were identified, all the way back to Sheridan Road. That then goes back to review what the village concerns were with the upstream flooding in certain areas that they're looking to address in time, make sure that this did not negatively affect that based on the new, I forget the new model, or not the model, but the new bulletin. I want to say it was the 85 bulletin versus the 82 if memory serves. Don't quote me on that, I confirm that, but they'll make sure that's affirmed to that bulletin model of rainfall for this event to make sure it's not negatively going to impact greater than what it is currently, and it would be improved upon. The 2 outfall structures that were identified as part of this, those water quality chambers helps with sediment control and first flush contaminants, but that's the extent of it. If there's further design beyond that, any parties want to take part of, mainly the village, that would be additional scope of services on their end that's not identified in our scope of work. Does that help clarify?
Somewhat, I still question, the modeling, we had a terminus inside the stone breakwater. And so right now, we don't know where that terminus is, correct?
Based on the new design, that's going to be something that comes out of the work product for the initial
That's
review.
what I thought. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Sure.
May I have a wait, does anybody else want to comment?
No, colleague took my
Sorry.
question.
Sorry.
That's why we let you go first.
May I have a motion to approve the proposal for Christopher B. Burke Engineering Limited for the combined total not to exceed $15,200, with the understanding that any outcomes that change the proposal cost be brought back to the park board for further consideration.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lusson,
Yes.
Commissioner Root,
Yes.
Commissioner Rath,
Yes.
Commissioner Archambault,
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Koto,
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, on to discussion of Centennial Dog Beach proposed size. One of the key parameters that we need to land upon to give further direction to our consultants is how much land to allocate to the dog beach. On October 27th, we passed a motion agreeing to maintain a dog beach at the south end of Centennial Park that shall be not less than 170 feet nor more than 270 feet. We've seen various proposals through the workshop. I would state for reference that the Wilmette Gilson Park Dog Beach is approximately 215 feet of shoreline frontage. Also for context, the beach that is between Lloyd and the Tower Road Power Plant is 205 feet. But that gives you some visual context for the beach. I know we've all been down to the beach. I could also provide one more frame of reference. The existing south steel at Centennial to the smaller line of steel that's south of the stairs is approximately 236 feet of beach. So that gives you some frame of reference. So,
Say that again, the southern steel drawings Centennial to the stairs.
not to the stairs, but to the line of steel that's just south of the stairs, it's 236 feet.
Got it, okay.
Approximately, because they stray from one another. So you've got 215 at Gilson, 205 between Tower and Lloyd, and 236 between the two lines of steel. Does anybody have want to jump in with an opinion?
I just have a question. When we did our dog park work back in August of 2021, what was the recommended size? Because I'm so sorry that I didn't think of this earlier, but we had some parameters for what made a decent dog park. It was a dryland dog park, but it was a decent dog park.
In 2021, that was when we were looking for, if I'm not mistaken.
Dryland.
Right, dry land to an extent.
There's 300 feet from
It's
east to
2019.
west. You're talking
2019, yeah,
Oh, okay.
sorry.
I misspoke. Okay.
There's the 22 work with the committee that helped design parameters around the Tower Road Dog Beach, if that was something to consideration. Is that what you're thinking, more or less,
Yeah.
the size
No,
of
I was
the
thinking of the
tower?
older set, the earlier set, excuse me. So I was thinking of the 2019 things when we looked at all the different places and we settled on Crow Island Woods and Westtown Park.
I would say that the product that came out of that was more based on the size of the
Available.
park sites
Okay.
available, not
Okay.
necessarily, it was always more was better, but
Yeah.
here we're in a unique environment where
Yeah.
it's not acreage that we're looking at, it's linear feet of beach, and
Yeah.
how we're gonna subdivide that beach to allow other elements for that as well, swimming, what have you.
Does anybody know the answer to how much Dog Beach we were contemplating at Tower?
100 to 170.
Say that again?
100 to 170. Would be-
At Tower.
Tower Beach.
Okay, got it.
Mickey and Colleen, you guys were part of that, do you have specific recollection?
I'm throwing out 170 to 200 is what I recall, Kyle.
I think we refined that further. I'm looking at an email from September 22nd, where we made an update to the dog park committee, based on a meeting that we had previously, I believe, on the night of Wednesday, September 21st. I communicated to the committee the size of the proposed dog beach and these adjusted options has not been finalized. However, it is anticipated to be larger than the size discussed last night. In parentheses, we discussed 100 to 170 feet.
Centennial in total, Warren, is 470.
Centennial in total is approximately 520 feet. The way it was fenced off previously was closer to 470, maybe even 500, where the original chain link fence was located. But the motion that passed was not less than 170, not more than 270.
So that steel right there, you're
Yep.
saying there to the existing groin, steel is, steel.
Where they intersect,
That's
is
236.
236.
Okay. And.
It's measured from Google Earth where, where it meets the shoreline. It kind of splays out from there, so. But that gives you an idea of overall width.
I have a silly question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. In the Evanston Dog Beach pamphlet, I noticed that for their fencing on one side anyway, because it only showed one side, they have like a groin there that like provides a natural fence. I know that our plan currently is to remove these groins, but is there any thought to, like, would they help us with the fence situation structurally? Where that would help us bookend one side of the dog beach and help us make this decision? Or is that, we're taking them out, we're starting fresh?
I don't think there's been any determination at Centennial. There are certainly plans that show the removal and replacement or outright removal, depending on how extensive we can proceed with the dog beach. But what we have committed to is to relocate the entrance to the
Yeah, yeah.
boardwalk level and provide a proper enclosure, maintaining a bypass. So it's really a question, we could use the existing line of steel it's further north as a foundation for a temporary or, I say temporary, it could be a multi-year fence depending upon our budgets. We could certainly use that, but I think what we need to give is design parameters. Obviously, beachfront is at a premium. The Winnetka Park District controls, I think, 2,450 thereabout total lineal feet of shore frontage. Presently, Centennial at 520 feet represents 21%. I think the board previously determined that 21% allocated to the exclusive use of dogs and their owners is too much. And contrast that with Wilmette, 215 feet of Gilson, measured against 3,500 lineal feet of Gilson public beach frontage. That's about 7%. So that's how we came up with 170 to 270. I'm comfortable with 200. I think that's a generous allocation of beachfront dog utilization.
I think the bulk of the comments that I read indicated more people beach, less dog beach. And we certainly want to get some dog beach because that's our goal. But I would lean towards the lower end of that range. 200 is a nice round number. 236 gets us, I'm not an expert, but 236 gets us to that temporary breakwater, somewhere in there. We don't really have any beach advocates here, any beach-going people who would push against us with our, we have dog park expertise people, right? So.
Sure. Let me give you some context. Lloyd is about 600 feet, and then for the beach, it's another 100 feet, with maybe more with the boat launch. Maple is around 260, Costa, correct me? Maple Beach is around 260 feet for a swimming beach. Then if you look at Tower, that's 515, 520, if you include from the pier all the way to our property line. So if we allocate 200 of a 520, that gives us 320 feet of a swimming beach, excluding 261 Church, or up to 261. So roughly the size, a little bit bigger than Maple. Now you're gonna use up some of that land area, presumably with groins, but that gives you some context.
Just a comment, and again, this is representative of the Dog Beach Advisory Committee. When we're talking about dogs, we're not talking about dogs. We're talking about people and how they use the beach. And, you know, I just want to clarify that. We're talking about our residents who like to take their dogs to the beach. So let's not talk about dogs because they don't go by themselves. But with all due respect, I'm kind of confused as to why we are addressing this issue tonight. It's already 9 o'clock. We have a lot of work to do, I think, in executive session. Why is this pertinent for this evening? And why?
Because we failed to address it in prior meetings, and we need to give direction to our design professionals so that they can come back on the 18th with some more specific plans.
But we've already said that Centennial is very conceptual at this point. So I'm going to make a motion that we table this discussion for our next committee of the whole meeting. Do I have a second?
Motion made second.
Can we move forward with a vote?
Commissioner Archambault, tabling the discussion regarding the Centennial.
Can I ask a question first?
There's a motion to table, that takes precedence.
Okay.
Commissioner Archambault.
No.
Commissioner Lusson.
No.
Commissioner Root.
Yes?
Commissioner Rapp.
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman.
No.
Commissioner Kodo.
No.
Commissioner James.
No. Motion to table fails, so let's continue the discussion.
So we're 170 to what, what's the, 170?
Between 170 and 270, we've had since October 27th.
Right, no.
Consideration of this.
Okay, can we narrow it?
Sure.
You know, it doesn't, we got 100 feet, that's a lot. So I don't think it should be any less than 200. 170 to me, 170 too small. So it's got to be at a minimum of 200. And I don't think, as I look at the design, sorry, my daughter's calling me. As I look at the design, I think we have flexibility in terms of the ADA where it would actually hit the beach, right? We can play with that within a lot of feet. So I don't think it's less than 200, and I don't think it's more than, you know, this 236 is 240. I think that given whatever we're going to do there, 200 to 240 should, will that be narrow enough of a band?
That's my question.
I would make a motion that we determine that the dog beach is measured from the south property, the current south property line, shall be not more than 236 feet, or shall not exceed the next line of steel north, and it shall not be less than 200 feet.
That's fine with me too. I'll second that.
So my question to Costa is that enough precision?
that's enough because depending on how the dog beach is identified, whether it's steel with fencing on top, whether it's a groin that helps separate, it's more of a natural barrier, that all plays into this because those groins come at a width.
Yeah.
And that width of the capstone typically is between 10 to 12 feet, and then you have the slope of the stone. We can set a fence shallow of the stone on the inside so you won't see it, so it would be a clean view vista across, but you still have the integrity of actual design, keep the dogs contained. We can work with that, minimum of 200,
Range
no
of
greater
200 to
than
236.
240 or whatever the dimension is to the existing.
Shall not be
middle
further
groin.
north of the existing line of
middle
steel.
groin.
That's approximately 236 feet north of the south property line.
That works well,
I think-
personally.
Great.
I think that's a neutral. I think that's a good neutral.
So,
All right.
is your motion that the dog beach be within the range of 200 to 236 feet from the south line? Is that what your motion was?
My motion is that the dog beach, as measured from the south property line, shall not be more than 236 feet, or the current line of steel north.
You don't want to put a
And
minimum on
not less than 200 feet in total.
So the motion has been made, we need someone to support the motion.
Second.
All right, so Commissioner Rapp, one, Commissioner Seaman, two, correct? Okay. Commissioner Archambault,
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp,
Yes.
Commissioner Root,
Abstain.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kodo,
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Okay. There's the director.
Just a couple. Number one, I was contacted by Mark Rosenthal for the Cook County Department of Animal and Rabies Control. He's the deputy director with that organization. So that was an incoming call, and he asked for additional information regarding the goings-on with Centennial Beach, Dog Beach. I think all of you have the email sent out, so I just wanted to let you know, A, how it happened, B, the communication to the administrator, and he replied this afternoon having received it, so I think we're in good standing there. I'm working on the legal expenses as well as the total expenses for Elder and Centennial, so I'll send out a memo on that, because I'm going to reorient the invoices to align the costs to a given calendar year. Because we receive invoices in January that go back to December services. So I'm going to make sure that these services are provided in 2021, and any invoice associated with the services in 2021, that cost is booked for that calendar year, from the perspective of giving board the accurate information. So it's a reorientation of all these spreadsheets. It's time well spent, but it's why I don't have all the information tonight. That's it.
Thank you. All right, remarks from visitors. Do I have to read this again?
No.
Does anybody want to?
Yes, I actually do.
Thank you, Scott.
I've sat here for a long time. So I come here, obviously not speaking as part of the Music Fest, and as of Tuesday night, no longer the chair of the Winnetka Caucus. So I'm just a resident, but obviously a resident that has been kind of watching the village for a long time. And, I guess I don't want this thing to come across as a lecture or a criticism of anything, more of a perspective, right? And it comes from having sat on the village council and dealt with some tough issues there. The stormwater, Winnetka, and one thing you learn is that, and you see this on the caucus, a lot of people in this town know that they are absolutely right. You absolutely need to build a swimming pool. Building a swimming pool is the stupidest thing we could ever do. You have to build one Winnetka. If you build one Winnetka, it's gonna ruin this village, right? We see it over and over. This is a village full of type A personalities. And we, as the boards, have to deal with that, right? People coming and saying, you're ruining my kid's education, this is the best school ever. I think one of the things that you're dealing with, you're right in the middle, right? I think looking back over the last 9 months, none of you would want to have walked the path you've walked in the way it has been walked, right? It has not been fun for any of you. You can see it watching the videos. And that path is still going forward, right? You are not near the end. So I guess from my experience with One Winnetka, from my experience with the stormwater, and take it for whatever you want, just kind of some thoughts, right? One of the thoughts that I think is important to keep in mind is the village wants a solution. But recognizing that the solution for everybody is different what they want. The one thing they all want is institutions that work. And right now, they don't see this institution working, right? You've heard them say it here in this meeting room. They've said this on the street, right? It's not working. And at the end of the day, when this issue is behind us one way or another, you're left with this institution, right? And the village residents are gonna say, where's our park district, right? So part of the message is you gotta figure out how to solve this problem and diffuse the pressure that's coming from out here, right? And that's where you feel it, right? It's your neighbors calling and saying, you have to do this, you have to do that. So you gotta listen, but your responsibilities is also to diffuse the tension. So that's number one. I think number two is, obviously, and I think you all feel this internally, right? I think it's how you show it externally, is you've gotta show trust and respect for your fellow commissioners and trust and respect for the people sitting out here, right? That they come to these meetings, they sit here for hours, when they talk, they wanna feel heard, right? They wanna feel like they're understood. And I guess that's the third point is I would encourage you to always take the approach of seek to understand, right? Seek first to understand. Seek to have curiosity. Seek to make sure that you are really hearing what the other person is saying, and that you have to believe that we have people of integrity here, right? In this town, I think, speaking for the caucus, have done a pretty good job selecting people of integrity. You may not agree on opinions, but you have to believe that the person is somebody that has integrity and is speaking from a point of view of trying to reach a solution for the village. And I guess that's the final point, right, is think in terms of consensus. What is the consensus here? Because here again, at the end of the day, the village residents may not be happy with the complete solution, but at the end, if they feel the institution was left strong and the institution was left with the members being able to say, yeah, I gave and I took, and at the end, I think we got a good solution. I think that's where we're gonna, we're gonna be at a good place at the end. So, it's just from my perspective, from, having sat in your seats for a while, it's not fun. When you're dealing with a lot of the residents who are way smarter than you, but don't want to take the time to volunteer. But I think it's partly important not just to focus on the solution, but to focus on the institution and what you're a part of, right? This has lasted for 100 years, and it's gonna last for another 100 years, and you're just passing along the way. And you gotta leave it stronger than you found it, and that, I think, is an important thing to keep in mind. So, took my 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? All right, board liaison reports.
And I wanted to pass along these statistics because they were remarkable to me. My students graduated in 2015 and 2018, and the average number, this is a post-high school counseling department presentation, the average number of applications per student is from 7.68 up to 9.54. Trier is unique in that it has a post-high school counseling department dedicated just to placing students in their post-high school profession. Acceptance rates at U of I have gone down from 2018 to 2022 from 63% to 45%. Acceptance rates at Michigan from 49% to 18%, and acceptance rates at Northwestern from 33% to 7%. interesting numbers. I mean, those are three big target local institutions.
Surprising.
It's not, I mean, applications are up all over. Once the Common App started, it was much easier to send out, you know, 15 months. I thought that was interesting, okay? The second thing is chronic absenteeism. I said this, that it was a nationwide problem. I dug into the statistics. I was alarmed. The chronic absenteeism is defined as 10% of the days per the school year, which is almost a full month of education. For freshmen, 14.2% of them are chronically absent. For sophomores, 21.4%. For juniors, 27.8%, and for seniors, 37.9%.
That's a,
The average
at New Trier?
at New Trier.
More than
That's
20 days absent?
more, no, that's 10%
Well,
of
it's
total
200
school days.
200
So
school days, 180
the
school days?
school year is roughly 210 days,
That's 20 days.
so that's 20 days. And the average across all four classes is 25.6%, and it has massive knock-on effects for teachers running a classroom when a chunk of their students are missing. It affects their ability to do group work, and it affects their ability to constantly have to work to catch up students. I thought those were a little shocking. That's my report, yes.
I shared your alarm. I shared your alarm when I saw those. I just wasn't sure if that, like, you pick up a kid early for an appointment, they miss their last period, does that go as an absent, like?
No,
Did you
these
know?
are excused
All right.
or unexcused.
I want to say it's 9:10.
Yeah, sorry.
It's a liaison report. That's
Yeah.
very helpful information, but I don't want to go too deep in the weeds.
It was weedy, sorry. It was a long.
Do you want to speak to D36?
I'm happy to let you speak to 236, but I will say that we had a brief mention in their meeting on the video.
Which meeting, to which meeting do you refer?
Oh, let,
Cynthia and I met with Emily Rose and Dan Waters of District 36. We discussed the land issues. There are 2 parcels of land, but District 36 is interested, an 8,280 square foot parcel that is necessary for the proposed construction of the classrooms and gymnasium. And then there's the existing first grade playground, which is approximately 26,000 square feet. It's been there for decades. There is a special use permit that was issued in around 2002 when they updated the playground, but this dates back to 1952 at least with the western expansion of Crow Island. So D36 has not been able to produce any written record of the agreement between parties, although it's obviously referenced in the special use permit. So they have identified the 26,000 square foot and change parcel that they are seeking to formalize the arrangement either through a lease, a license, or a conveyance of the property. And their preference is a conveyance. I don't want to belabor it, but we will discuss it further when they come back with their formal act.
That was a very good D36 update.
Any other liaison reports?
we're getting down to this now.
All right. Staff reports.
We had our first day of spring registration on Monday the 13th, so that was last Monday. It was a morning rife with chaos as our registration system did not start as intended, but credit to the recreation staff, Debbie, Toby, James, Matt, for problem solving, acting quickly, fielding a number of in-person registrations, and within 2 hours we were able to get the problem solved and up and running. Registrations for camp are fantastic. We are at waiting lists for many portions of our camp already, and that is what we had hoped to be, what we had hoped to have happened. So fortunately, and thank you to the community for being understanding. Parent-child date night was last week, last Thursday, amidst the snow that came and was completely unaffected by the weather. It was a fantastic event. Michigan Shore was an awesome host and one that I expect we will continue working with into the future. We are working with some conversations with the library, how we can collaborate further, cross-promote some of our programming. I think it's a great opportunity to work in cooperation with other sections of the Winnetka community. Summer staff hiring is ongoing, interviewing is ongoing. As alarming as some of the statistics that Commissioner Cotto has communicated, unfortunately, it makes sense given what we are seeing with some of the staffing and consistency with the hours that they will or won't put in. But nevertheless, we persist and we push forward. And I'm confident that we are in a better spot right now than we were at this point last year with our hiring. So if, considering that and only that, we're doing something right. So that's a major positive for Matt Barton, for James Chinescu, and Toby Ross. They're putting together some strong staffs. We completed our fenced-in boat storage lottery and had our drawing last week. The lottery brought in just shy of $11,000 for the lottery opportunity for 1 3-year slip at our fenced-in storage. What is significant and something to be excited for, this was our last year of only having a lottery. Starting next year, we will go on the cycle of having 1 lottery space as well as 1 bid space each year. So there's opportunity for a longer tenant or longer use of the space for various boats. We're excited for that. And then the foundation is working on supporting some of our events, and I can let Anya speak further on that. That's all for recreation.
Thank you. Jim?
Nothing more to add.
Audit,
We're still
okay,
early on in the process.
You had your chance.
I'm done.
Costa?
Sure. Currently, paddle is still underway. Electrician should be out next week. There was a delay with service panel that got delivered this week, so they're going to be out next week, starting on that process. So we're going to keep pressing forward on that. Stormwater, you're going to see some upturning work here on Hibbard Road as it relates to the spring break. There's going to be closures on Hibbard to perform the services that they need to for a lot of the water main work that's forthcoming. So you're going to see some of that with some closures here and there with, or not closures, but some flaggers here and there. We will have closure for for Oak Street. We'll have some circulation detours that we're working through. So need to update staff on some of the things that came out of today's meeting and timelines for that. But process is going well. I know I discussed with the board the opportunity to work with a third party to try to get the greenside bunker work done. Bringing that back to the village, talking with the mayo. They had further conversations with the current contractor of Wadsworth, who is the current golf course contractor that's subcontracted by the village. They are working to provide us with a tighter number. So there's one scope being performed as far as services on the course, which is great. So we're working on with them to have them sharpen their pencil, if you will, to drive that down further to keep it within our budget of what we had performed or had presented. So we're continuing on with that. Not to take any notes from Kemper, but for a golf course Kemper update, I forget Drew's last name. I apologize just with the whirlwind of everything going on, but there was an offer put out to a director of agronomy that was accepted. Drew, and I forget his last name, top of mind, did accept the position. So we will be furthering that staff. And I believe there has been an offer that's been put out to a potential mechanic as well. I'm not sure if that was accepted or not, but they're starting to get their feet under them as far as staffing, which is great. So we can start continuing in with that. But I will have Matt formally give an update. Matt Chauncey gives a formal update when the hiring has been completed through Kemper, so everybody knows who those people are. And then as far as other work, we're just continuing on.
Yeah, so I am working with Jim and Taylor on a couple of auditing issues, not issues, but things that the auditors need for the foundation. So we're working to clean up some spreadsheets. Foundation has decided to pay for the band for a Park District beach bash. So I think the band is $3,500, and they decided to pay for $5,000 towards the beach bash party that we have June 23rd, so save the date. Dr. Bombay is going to play down there, which is a dad band, actually. No, he's not ready. Maybe I'll get them for the stage there at the Winnetka Music Fest. And then we're doing a parents soccer event, which is new, May 20th. Hoping to get about 5 to 6 teams. Not entirely sure about the ticket price, maybe $100 per person. And they decided that any event that they're gonna make, they wanna at least do a threshold of like at least trying to raise $5,000 per event, so, and not to.
You can have Athletico sponsor that?
I think we should, yeah, or Illinois Bone and Joint, I was just there for MRI.
Yeah.
We should have, definitely. And then kickball, we're throwing around dates in August and September based on the availability of the field, and then we'll still do the ladies tennis. And then the Dick's Sporting Goods coupons, the partnership was renewed, and the first Gear Up event is going to be the weekend before spring break, so it'll be March 17th to the 20th. And all those coupons live online on our website.
Thank you. I can add one more. So development at the ice arena, it's an aging facility, coming up on 50 years. There is a need for repairing the Zamboni, the floor beneath the Zamboni. That was an unexpected cost. It's going to be to the tune of around $15,000. That was not a budgeted cost, but Paul is already taking steps to absorb that into the budget, so it will not be a burden, but it is a reality of an aging facility. That's one thing there.
Thank you. All right. We have a motion to go into closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120, Section 2C1, the appointment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body. 5 ILCS 120, Section 2C5, for the purchase or lease of property. 5 ILCS 120, 2C6, for the setting of a price for sale or lease of property. 5 LCS 122 C11 for litigation when an action against affecting or on behalf of a particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent. And 2C21, discussion of minutes, meetings lawfully closed under this act, but for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06. We have a motion.
So,
Is there a second?
sorry.
Second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Archambault.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Rapp.
Yes.
Commissioner Root.
Yes.
Commissioner Seaman.
Yes.
Commissioner Koto.
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes. And we will be convening after, we will be convening after this to consider adopting amendments to the closed session meeting minutes. That's the only matter of business. You want to take this?
Yeah.
Take 3, take 5.
Like one day without weekend.